Immortal for 10,000 years, how dare this rabble? Below, only a few eunuchs remained, clasping their hands, their voices trembling, as they reported to His Majesty. "They've already stormed into the main hall. Reinforcements are almost here." The emperor's eyes blazed with fury. He slammed his fist onto the throne, roaring, "This rabble! I will go invite an immortal to annihilate them." He angrily stood up and, under the eunuchs' expectant gazes, walked towards his palace behind him. He remembered his imperial father once saying that 100 meters deep below was where an immortal was in secluded cultivation. Now he would go invite that immortal to eradicate this rabble. The emperor angrily ran to the front of his palace, loudly yelling towards the immortal's dwelling, "Come out quickly and help me eradicate this rabble! Immortal, come out quickly!" There was no response at all. The emperor's expression gradually grew anxious. He continuously pounded on the ground, furiously roaring, "Come out quickly, immortal! Come out quickly!" In the end, the immortal still didn't send a single reply. The encircling peasant army arrived at this place, capturing the Dao Emperor alive. From then on, the Dao dynasty was considered annihilated, and a new dynasty named Dao Xia emerged. The first thing the emperor did upon taking office was kowtow and worship the statue of Chen Xia. The existence of immortals was deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. All former citizens of Dao believed in immortals, so the first thing the current Dao Xia emperor did upon taking office was to kowtow and worship the immortal. Chen Xia, 100 meters deep below, naturally took all these events into his sight, but he didn't concern himself with such human calamities. The changing of dynasties was unavoidable. Recalling several hundred years ago, he and Song Qian had once said that no dynasty could last forever. Even if he wasn't the imperial preceptor of Dao, he would still be the imperial preceptor of Datang, Dazun, or Dali. And time had proven everything. He was an outsider in the flow of time. The only thing he needed to do was remain silent. Chapter 37. 10,000-year Nascent Soul Lightning Tribulation. If 500 years was a cycle of samsara, then Chen Xia was witnessing this very cycle. His divine sense occasionally expanded, merging with heaven and earth, perceiving the voices of all living beings. According to the Q refiners, this was a sign of ascension to godhood. He was about to become a part of this heavenly Dabio, even replacing it to become the sole god of this realm. This process still required a bit more time for accumulation. Chen Xia wasn't in a hurry. His grand turtle breath technique had now been cultivated to perfection, but there was no hint for the next stage's cultivation method. Chen Xia estimated that he probably had to wait until he reached the nascent soul stage for this grand turtle breath technique to upgrade based on his chi luck. Otherwise, it was due to insufficient chi luck, and he would have to allocate more chi luck. Currently, his strength had reached 350, chi luck 40, and magic power 0, a perfect archetype of a brave but witless warrior. Actually, Chen Xia felt there was no need to allocate magic power. He could just get magic resistance points later. Allocating strength was to hit people harder, and chi luck was for critical strikes to hit people even harder. These two complement each other and can provide mutual support. However, Chen Xia was also somewhat interested in spiritual energy, planning that once he had more points, he would allocate 1 point to spiritual energy just for fun, to see what effect it would have. Furthermore, the connection between Chen Xia and this small piece of heaven and earth was growing deeper. Sometimes, he even felt that he was heaven and earth itself. That's also why a tremor would sometimes resonate in his mind, the mysterious sound of heaven and earth. It had occasionally reverberated since 10 years ago, a series of urgent tremors. Chen Xia felt it was like a warning. But what exactly was it warning him about? Volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tsunamis. Though these calamities had terrifying destructive power over mortals, they had no effect whatsoever on heaven and earth. In fact, heaven and earth were the very cause of these disasters. So what else could it be? Chen Xia quickly realized it must be the cultivators from outside, the great hand that had destroyed the city years ago. That was why heaven and earth warned him, because this entity did not belong to heaven and earth. It would even erode the great Dao of heaven and earth. Chen Xia's mind had also been under strain for the past 10 years. To resist this great hand, he had accelerated the writing of his Dao Chapter, intending to complete it before the great hand descended. If he could use this netherworld abyss Dao Chapter to drag the great hand into a one-on-one combat, thereby stealing 3 parts of its power, Chen Xia was confident he would secure victory. The highlight was a single word. I not only want to torment you right before your eyes, but I will also beat you to a pulp. So Chen Xia was extremely busy now, condensing profound soul chi during the day and writing his Dao Chapter at night. The Great Hand had last appeared about 400 years ago. If calculated by its 500-year cycle, there were still 100 years left before Chen Xia would have to face the pressure of the Great Hand. Chen Xia had thought it through. By then, he would have 3 choices: fight or run. Actually, there was no need to think at all. But if he considered permutations, there were 2 more ways: fight, then run if he couldn't win; run, then fight if he couldn't escape. The options are truly numerous, huh? Chen Xia chuckled derisively, redoubling his cultivation. He strived to be able to punch the great hand to death 100 years from now. But life was always full of surprises, and never went entirely as planned. Today, Huangcheng suddenly darkened, becoming even darker than night, because even at night, there was moonlight. People rushed out, gazing at the sky, feeling that the shadow enveloping the heavens resembled a finger, and this finger was continuously descending. Though still dozens of miles away, the swirling qui it brought had already stirred up a fierce gale within the city. The common people were terrified. After receiving the news, the powerful officials and nobles immediately prepared their carriages at the first possible moment, hoping to escape. But the entire hand was hundreds of miles wide. Even if your carriage traveled without rest, it could only cover 50 miles in a day. How could anyone escape in a single day? As for the people remaining in the imperial capital, they began to wait for death. However, they weren't just sitting idle. Some citizens began frantically kowtowing and bowing to Chen Xia's statue, hoping that an immortal could save the world. Others, who had lost all hope, were annoyed by seeing people kowtow and bow. One massive kick toppled Chen Xia's statue. Pointing at the statue and trembling uselessly in anger, "No one can save us. Don't dream about immortals anymore. This is just a rumor from centuries past. Just wait for death, wait for death." The kowtowing person picked up the statue and sighed, "Curse all you want, but there's no need to kick the immortal's head." The two who kicked the statue also let out a long sigh. How could they not hope for an immortal to save the world? But there was no such thing. The giant hand in the sky was getting closer and closer, and everyone could already see the clear lines between its fingers. Between its fingers, flashes of lightning flickered like tiny slithering snakes. Everyone knew by now. Immortals wouldn't save the world. Immortals wanted to destroy it. In the innermost sanctum of the imperial city, the current emperor trembled as he stepped into the center of the imperial bedchamber. He bowed and kowtowed, trying to suppress his trembling voice as he respectfully said, "The Emperor of Dao Chapter respectfully requests the immortal to emerge." He kowtowed heavily, the sound echoing around him. After the sound of his kowtow faded, complete silence enveloped the surroundings. No other sound could be heard. The Emperor of Dao Chapter's body trembled. He thought of what the previous emperor had told him, of the legends passed down through the ages, and how he himself had to worship the immortal statue every year. Indignant, he kowtowed heavily once more, pleading for the immortal to save the world. This time, even the wind fell silent. The corners of the Dao Chapter emperor's mouth twitched. He stood up in a rage, pointed at the ground, and cursed, "Tens of thousands of Dao Chapter citizens! Every year, I worship you, treating you as the most supreme existence. Why must you act like a timid turtle, hiding and refusing to show your face? Could it be that you're afraid of this giant hand in the sky, only daring to hide yourself and flee early on? Who the hell are you to call yourself an immortal? You're just a cunning little villain playing tricks." The Dao Chapter emperor's cursing still didn't quench his anger. He had to stomp his foot on the ground a few times to show his fury. Once his rage dissipated, he collapsed onto the ground in despair, gazing at the giant hand in the sky with a blank expression. Perhaps there were no immortals in this imperial city at all. It was merely a lie concocted by previous emperors, used to solidify their empire. Why did I believe it? The emperor let out a bitter laugh, covered his face with both hands, and couldn't help but burst into tears. "Let me die with my empire." A hand suddenly rested on his shoulder, followed by a voice carrying a hint of a smile. "When it comes to cussing people out, you're still way too polite." The emperor looked up in surprise. Tears still lingered in the corners of his eyes as he stared blankly at the young man before him, his expression immediately turning to shock. Because the young man before him bore many similarities to the immortal statue. Though not identical, he was at least 5 parts similar. It was mainly the temperament, a nonchalant aura, and the fact that he could remain so unfazed in the current situation. "Immortal?" the emperor asked in disbelief. There, don't cry. Go wait behind me and watch my show," Chen Xia advised, as if coaxing a child. Indeed, in terms of age, the current emperor before him was truly a child. The emperor blushed, hastily stood up, cupped his hands, and bowed to Chen Xia, respectfully greeting the immortal. A smile played on Chen Xia's lips. "Then you'd better take a good look. You won't get to see it again." The emperor looked up, only caught a glimpse, and before he could even see clearly, Chen Xia's figure had already appeared in the sky. His foot suddenly stomped forward, and the entire sky condensed into dark clouds, covering hundreds of miles, even enveloping this massive hand within them. Crimson lightning bolts danced within the dark clouds. Occasionally, lightning dragons would take form, poking their heads out. Looking down, an ancient and terrifying aura emanated from within. A pair of pale blue eyes peered out from within the dark clouds, like the gaze of eternity itself, searching for a tribulation undergoer. This was a 100,000-year emperor-level lightning tribulation. Chapter 38. Give me a 0.01 boost, about to sever the massive hand. In the immortal realm, countless divine senses almost immediately looked towards this small world, converging on the heavenly Tao to observe. Several of these divine senses belonged to old acquaintances who had known each other for tens of thousands of years, and immediately communicated with each other, asking with astonishment, a 100,000-year nascent soul lightning tribulation? Can a character of this caliber appear in this small world? Even if you beat me to death, I wouldn't believe that a peerless heavenly talent undergoing a 100,000-year nascent soul lightning tribulation could appear in this small world, so lacking in spiritual energy and opportunities. While they were exchanging divine senses, a great power frowned and asked, "What is this massive hand? How can a heaven and earth dharma manifestation brazenly reach into my immortal realm?" A saint's divine sense leisurely replied, "It's merely borrowing a living being." Judging by this demeanor, he must have already become a saint. Coming to this small world belonging to the immortal realm to harvest some karmic luck, his calculations were quite clever. Who would have thought he'd run into such a tough opponent now? A 100,000-year nascent soul lightning tribulation, eh? Oh my, if this person just passes this, the path to Great Emperor will be wide open, as long as he doesn't die prematurely. Shedding his mortal shell and becoming an emperor is inevitable. While the great powers exchanged divine senses, they also turned their gaze to assess the tribulation undergoer. Very quickly, someone frowned. What's going on? There's no blessing of this world's karmic luck on him? The other great powers were stunned for a moment. Even after living for tens of thousands of years, they had never heard of such a thing. Someone undergoing a 100,000-year nascent soul lightning tribulation, yet still having no blessing of the world's karmic luck. Isn't this like an eunuch visiting a brothel? How ridiculous is that? The comparison might be a bit crude, but that's the gist of it. The few great powers, truly unable to figure it out, stopped pondering, and directly used their great divine abilities to reverse deduce his past and present lives. Chen Xia's karma and opportunities? The answer was none, a complete blank. A few great powers sighed, feeling that this was obvious, as he was, after all, a person without karmic luck. The divine senses transformed into illusory figures, standing on the heavenly Tao, looking at each other. Their expressions seemed to hold unspoken words, but no one spoke first. The few great powers, with various expressions, each harbored their own schemes in their hearts. Finally, a grandmaster couldn't help but exclaim, "If he's truly devoid of qi luck, then my Yu Tian sect will simply suffer a small loss, and take him into the sect." A great sage immediately sneered, "A luckless fellow with emperor-level talent. Your Yu Tian sect is truly taking a massive hit, huh?" The grandmaster from Yu Tian sect, without a blush or a racing heart, calmly replied, "My Yu Tian sect doesn't need to rely on the qi luck of heaven and earth at all. Logically speaking, it's only right that I bear this loss." "Hey, what you're saying isn't right." An old sage shook his head and replied, "Though my Dinshan relies on the qi luck of heaven and earth, we can also expend a large amount of effort to help this person reshape his true body, forging a supreme immortal physique to match his emperor-level talent." The grandmaster from Yu Tian sect looked at the old man with a solemn expression, then said in a deep voice, "You old geezer are crazy. You even dare to speak of forging a supreme immortal physique? What will you use to forge it? Are you going to use that ancient monster hidden for countless years in your Dishan's bronze coffin? It might just be possible." The old man uttered the sentence as casually as a passing breeze. The atmosphere between the grandmasters grew tense and heavy. "Hey now, slow down everyone. Let's first see if this person can even survive this 100,000-year lightning tribulation. What if the lightning tribulation just strikes him dead? What are you guys still arguing about then? That actually makes sense." The grandmasters immediately sent their divine sense downwards, blending with the wind and rain of heaven and earth, affecting nothing, simply observing in silence. Looking at the dark clouds covering the sky, the lightning tribulation erupted from all sides. They watched the green-robed figure stand firm in the sky, directly facing the immense pressure of the giant hand. Chen Xia calmly gazed at the giant hand pressing down, the swirling airflow making his hair fly and his robes flutter in the wind. His current power was 399. His realm was peak golden core, also known as half-step nascent soul. Is he qualified? Chen Xia didn't know either, but if he didn't try, he would never know. Survival was certainly important, but in a person's life, there were always things more important than life itself. Is there anything worth risking your life for? A confident smile played on Chen Xia's lips, a cyan light flashing in his eyes, as he stepped directly towards the giant hand. He was the deity of this world, uncaring of human calamities, yet he must eradicate heavenly calamities. The city dwellers walked on the streets, seeing the green-robed figure walking towards the giant hand right in the center. At first, they were a little stunned. Then someone, unknown who, shouted, "Immortal!" "That's an immortal!" The people in the imperial city immediately erupted into a frenzy, kowtowing in fervent worship towards the lone figure walking in the sky. With agitated expressions, they cried out, begging the immortal to save the world. Chen Xia stopped his steps, gauged the distance, then began to roll up his sleeves. He extended his fist, brought it to his mouth, and blew on it a few times. This is enhanced magic. He stomped on the sky. A loud bang erupting from the sole of his foot. A furious gale swept across the sky, seemingly unable to withstand this heavy suppression, emitting trembling creaks. Chen Xia's figure shot out, like a meteor flying against the current, trailing a cyan streak of light across the sky, creating a zone of light within the darkness of the giant hand. In just an instant, the meteor collided with the giant hand, emitting a thunderous roar that echoed through heaven and earth. The giant hand's downward pressure suddenly stopped, even retreating hundreds of meters. The city's residents erupted in cheers, but the giant hand only retreated for a moment, then swung down with even greater force. The pressure wave generated by the downward swing blew up many houses in the imperial city. The residents' expressions turned to horror as they hastily dodged. The giant hand was still swinging down. Chen Xia gritted his teeth, determined to stand firm. Have you ever swatted a mosquito? With a strong slap of the hand, killing the mosquito, smashing it into a pulp. Chen Xia was now that mosquito. The arrogant giant hand swung down, seemingly increasing its force, as if wanting to suppress everything. Thus, Chen Xia flew even faster than he arrived, plummeting straight into the center of the imperial city, destroying houses, plowing deep into the ground, digging a furrow hundreds of meters deep before he could stand firm. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Chen Xia reached out and pushed aside the rubble next to him, crawled up and spat out a mouthful of blood. Frowning as he looked at the giant hand, he thought of a saying he had heard before. Congratulations, you've completed the newbie tutorial. Now, try challenging the king. The current situation was somewhat similar to this saying. Chen Xia wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, standing still. He was waiting for his Linglong Qi to reach 999 1/1000ths. Waiting for his trump card to take shape, the power of reverence from the imperial city's residents slowly flowed in, merging into his Linglong Qi. It was almost complete. Chen Xia let out a sigh, stepping onto the rubble, standing firm, and facing the descending giant hand. His divine sense spread in all directions, transmitting his thoughts to all living beings. Bow and pray, lend me a hand. I just need one more of you. Then I can sever this giant hand. The residents were stunned for a moment, then hastily kowtowed and worshipped together. Chen Xia's accumulate small, achieve great Linglong Qi, 1000, 1000. A brilliant golden light flashed in his eyes. Behind him, an ancient dragon's roar echoed. Golden vertical pupils appeared, and 1,000 Zhang true dragon with 5 claws grasping the earth coiled between heaven and earth. Chapter 39. The wind of luck blows from behind me. A brilliant golden light shone in Chen Xia's eyes, and a notification appeared in his mind. The 70/10,000th true dragon, currently behind him, was 1,000 Zhang true dragon, its mighty head piercing the clouds. The huge, tyrannical hand pressed down, accompanied by roaring lightning tribulations, bringing a terrifying, world-ending sensation. Chen Xia tore off Bu Qingyi's tattered sleeve, casually tossed it to the ground, then spat out a mouthful of blood, and looked again at the huge hand. If the huge hand was the sky itself, then he was just an insignificant ant of the world, living under its shadow, not worth mentioning. But was he really not worth mentioning? Chen Xia's lips curved into a confident smile. Even if that huge hand truly was the sky, he would still ride a golden dragon and cleave it in two. A violent surge of air rolled down, blasting apart houses and flattening the water's surface. Within 100 light radius, rivers churned with waves, and birds fell dead to the ground. Chen Xia took his first step, incredibly steady amidst the chaotic current. The 1,000 Zhang true dragon behind him let out a soaring, echoing roar, becoming his grand vision at the highest point of the sky. The divine senses of several great experts were even more bewildered. They all furrowed their brows, their tones slightly astonished. What's going on here? How could even an ancient remnant be summoned? What kind of background does this kid have? Is he an emperor's reincarnation? He doesn't quite seem like it, but it's too strange. I've never heard of any cultivator being able to summon a true dragon of ancient lineage. Even in the immortal realm, there are few true dragons. They are all cultivated within the dragon abyss, by the dragon ancestors. These great experts couldn't see through it. Then let's not think about it anymore. After all, there are so many things in the myriad heavens and 10,000 realms. If we could understand everything, we wouldn't still merely be saints. The most tense situation right now was still the fierce battle between Chen Xia and the huge hand. He used his grand vision of the 1,000 Zhang true dragon, with its golden art, to resist the huge hand. The collision of the two sides caused space to twist and shatter, revealing the dark void within. The huge hand couldn't press down further. The true dragon couldn't lift its head. The two sides were thus locked in a stalemate. Chen Xia gritted his teeth, held the dragon's head tightly with both hands, resolutely resisting the pressure from the huge hand. His entire body's qi and blood surged, pouring out all his strength. Even the corners of his mouth began to bleed. So he made a rather ill-conceived proposal. How about we each take a step back? You go back first, and come back in another 200 years. By then, I will definitely give you a proper reception." This proposal was perhaps truly ill-conceived, to the point where the huge hand didn't reply at all. Instead, it instantly pressed down with even greater force. This intensified shockwave caused the ground dozens of line away to crack, spreading out in spiderweb-like fissures. Chen Xia, who bore the brunt of it, naturally became even more disheveled. He coughed up a large mouthful of blood from the corner of his mouth, and looking at the huge hand in front of him, he was also a little angry. "If you don't agree, then so be it. Why suddenly increase your force? Do you really take me for a soft persimmon to be squeezed?" Chen Xia gritted his teeth. A brilliant, rich golden light erupted from his pupils. The golden light rapidly spread, enveloping his body. In an instant, he transformed into a resplendent golden divine being. Riding the thousand zang golden dragon, he charged desperately towards the huge hand, fighting fiercely. The huge hand began to spurt blood and sustained wounds of varying sizes. The terrifying pressure on it decreased as its qi and blood drained away, as if losing its vitality. Chen Xia used one hand to tear off the edge of the huge hand's fingernail, directly pulling out a deep, bloody gash thousands of meters long, and muttered under his breath, "I'll give your finger a nasty bar." The qi and blood scattered across the sky, before even falling to the ground, were vaporized by the terrifying aura of the battle between the two sides, dissipating between heaven and earth. The huge hand seemed to get angry too, and no longer pressed down. Instead, it chose to directly clasp its two hands together, intending to thoroughly crush Chen Xia within its grasp. Chen Xia also didn't back down. He charged madly towards the huge hand, wanting to use the huge hand's qi and blood to dye the azure sky red. And from the far reaches of the sky, a cold and arrogant voice echoed, "A puny creature like an ant dares to cause trouble in my palm. I shall turn my palm into the great Dao, obliterate your soul, and let your physical body vanish into thin air, never to enter reincarnation." The mighty cultivators in the sky had their expressions drastically changed, immediately speaking of the existence of a quasi-emperor from another realm. Why would he come to this small world to harvest destiny? Could it be that he intends to rear this small world, harvest it for 10,000 years, and finally condense it into a magic treasure? The mighty cultivators speculated endlessly, but none dared to act, harboring extreme wariness. Not to mention the 100,000-year nascent soul lightning tribulation still brewing in the sky. This quasi-emperor alone was not someone they could easily provoke. Moreover, when they arrived in this small world, under the suppression of the current violent will of heaven and earth, their cultivation realm could at most reach the peak of golden core. In short, it wouldn't make much of a difference, so it was better to wait and see. Whether he lived or died was this kid's own fate. The strong survive, the weak perish. The great Tao struggle between heaven and earth has always been this cruel and ruthless, and no one will reason with you. Chen Xia's fate? If he were to answer himself, he would surely nod. Because his luck was always very good, 40 points of destiny weren't added for nothing. Gritting his teeth, he unleashed his true fire, no longer holding back against this massive hand, directly charging towards each finger. The sky trembled violently, the great Tao quaked, and the entire small world was shaken by this battle. The more Chen Xia fought, the fiercer he became. The 7-colored golden core in his body shimmered. He hadn't broken through to Nascent Soul, but his golden core instead shone with another brilliant light, a streak of golden radiance. His golden core now possessed two brilliant colors, radiant white and dazzling gold. The radiant white was the great Tao of time, and the dazzling gold was the true dragon manifestation. He fought until his entire body was drenched in blood, forcefully broke off a pinky finger tens of miles long, smashing the mountain-sized finger into a rain of blood that spread across heaven and earth, and the world, drenched by the blood rain, began to diffuse abundant spiritual energy. Myriad things flourished. Chen Xia himself was also not lightly injured. His entire body's qi and blood surged. Fresh blood frequently spurted from the corner of his mouth. But when one fights until their eyes turn red, they no longer care about their own injuries. Chen Xia now had only one thought: to completely smash this massive hand. The massive hand also became enraged, and began to burn its qi and blood power, wanting to completely crush Chen Xia, this puny ant. Mountains collapsed, rivers flowed backward, countless blood rain descended upon the mortal world, transforming into abundant spiritual energy that diffused throughout heaven and earth. The people stared blankly at the sky, watching the dark shadow overhead gradually shrink until it completely disappeared. But the blood rain continued to fall relentlessly. Chen Xia stood alone between heaven and earth, gasping for breath incessantly, his body covered in fresh blood. His strength had been exhausted to its limit, and his entire hand trembled. In the sky, the silent eyes, which had watched the entire slaughter since the primordial era, finally began to stir, gazing intently at Chen Xia. There were no other movements, but the sky filled with thunderclouds and lightning began to roar. The mountain-sized heavenly lightning blazed, carrying a murderous intent, ready to strike. Chen Xia gasped, helplessly gazing at the dark clouds filling the sky, and made a final decision. He added the points he had just earned to his destiny value. 41. He was ready to begin. Gambling his life, Chen Xia stood tall, facing the sky-filling lightning with a calm expression, offering a final smile. A wind of fortune would surely blow from behind him. Chapter 40. The lightning of the great myriad heavens unleashed upon the mortal world, as giant eyes from ancient times silently gazed down intently at everything. Until the lightning annihilated the tribulation cultivator, the mountain-sized lightning retreated into the dark clouds. The lightning, once more, manifested as a hidden, primordial forest. The dark clouds that had enveloped the entire small world then dissipated. The 100,000-year primordial spirit, its heavenly tribulation having disappeared, retreated into the thunder pool of the azure heavens. The divine senses of the mighty experts hurriedly swept towards the former spot, their hearts seizing with a profound sense of disappointment. The figure undergoing tribulation was nowhere to be seen. Had he perhaps vanished along with the heavenly tribulation? The mighty experts sighed once more. What a pity for a great emperor's seed, they thought. But it is merely a pity. Great emperors in heaven and earth were few and far between. A great emperor seed that failed to mature could only ever receive a sigh of regret. The divine senses of the mighty experts returned to the immortal realm, scattering in all directions. They no longer lingered, nor did they care about this small world. Yet the transformation of this small world began from the very moment this rain of blood fell. The 100 herbs revived, bearing strange forms. Some people, mistakenly consuming them, gained mysterious divine abilities, such as being able to perform photosynthesis. There were even peak experts of the jianghu. Suddenly, their minds achieved enlightenment, and they stepped onto the path of immortality. Wild beasts in the mountains began to mutate. Some could even speak human language. Even more amusing, a certain black bear demon kept sneaking into the nearby temple to steal monk robes. Truly a uniform fetishist. Thus, the immortal path unfolded across this entire small world. Thus, everyone learned one thing. Spiritual energy had recovered within the vast expanse of water. The water surface was as smooth as a mirror, like the very end of time. Chen Xia lay on the water surface, dazedly sitting up. He looked at his perfectly unblemished self, feeling even more bewildered this time. "You're awake?" A calm inquiry came from the mouth of an old fisherman, slowly reaching Chen Xia's ears. "You are?" Chen Xia asked, a hint of suspicion in his voice. The old fisherman, holding a bronze fishing rod, his aged face breaking into a smile. "It was I who fished you out from the river of time." "Did I become a river drifter then?" Chen Xia was a little surprised. The old fisherman's thick eyebrows furrowed slightly as he said, "You can't put it that way. You could say you've ascended, but not to the immortal realm, rather, to the great myriad heavens." Chen Xia's expression grew even more bewildered. The old fisherman then explained, "In the all heavens and 10,000 realms, the place you were in before was a lesser grotto heaven. The immortal realm is a great realm, and this place is an even higher level, called the grand myriad heavens." "Is there any difference?" Chen Xia asked, furrowing his brow. The old fisherman shook his head. "None. It's always the strong who feasted, and the weak who eat shit. No difference at all." Though crude, his words held profound truth. It truly was this principle. Chen Xia then asked, "Why did you fish me out?" The old fisherman chuckled softly. His thick eyebrows, like two long caterpillars, twitched up, and he extended a finger, answering, "Because you are the one." Chen Xia was stunned, thinking of some unpleasant implications, and hastily shook his head. "I'm not the one, nor not one. You are the unique one." The old fisherman paid no mind to Chen Xia's words, continuing, "You are the unique one in this lesser grotto heaven. To put it colloquially, you're the protagonist." All right. Chen Xia nodded repeatedly, but his curiosity wasn't quelled. "But you still haven't said why you fished me out." The old fisherman chuckled. "Just taking in a disciple, that's all. You can consider it me completing a task. That's why I had to fish out you, this unique one, to be my disciple." "Why me?" Chen Xia frowned, asking for the third time. "Why can't it be you?" The old man smiled and retorted, "Why can't it be you?" He then offered an explanation. "Your talent has reached the great emperor level, and you are the unique one of a lesser grotto heaven, with the potential to transcend. Furthermore, with the existence of a variant true dragon, it's only natural to choose you." Chen Xia crossed his arms over his chest and asked another question. "Who are you?" The old fisherman chuckled faintly, looking at him and asking, "You cultivate the great Dao of time, yet you don't know who I am." Chen Xia frowned. "I'm guessing you're the time ancestor?" The old fisherman shook his head. No, but I was once the time ancestor, Chen Xia muttered. Then I can't guess. Chen Xia chose to give up. The old fisherman chuckled. Who I am doesn't matter. Anyway, after I take you as a disciple, and the apprenticeship is complete, you probably won't see me around much. Ha ha. Chen Xia didn't respond to that, changing the subject to ask, what sect are we from? The old fisherman's profound eyes gazed at him, and he chuckled faintly. The azure heaven sword sea, among the top 3 in the grand myriad heavens. Chen Xia probed. If I choose not to go through with it, can you send me back to where you fished me out from? The old fisherman directly shook his head. He domineeringly replied, This old man never returns empty-handed. Chen Xia was stunned. This old geezer is quite the character. The old fisherman chuckled faintly. In the grand myriad heavens, anything goes. There are all sorts of mixed power systems. Immortal cultivation systems, technological systems, superpower systems. You don't need to worry about any of it. Just remember this incantation, and it'll ensure your safety. Chen Xia sat up straight and listened intently as the old fisherman slowly began to recite. Don't dress too warmly, don't eat too much, don't live too luxuriously, don't travel too lavishly, don't work too hard, don't be overly complacent, don't be excessively joyful, don't be overly angry, don't seek too much fame, don't be too greedy for profit. If you can't win, run. Chen Xia was stunned at first, then nodded repeatedly. Good. It truly felt like listening to a king's wisdom. Hearing him say like listening to a king's wisdom, the old fisherman also burst out laughing, nodding as he said, Kid, you're actually quite interesting. Get up, prepare to come with me to the Kangritian Sword Sea. Chen Xia stood up, waiting for the old fisherman to lead the way. But the old fisherman remained still, placing his fishing rod by his side, looking at the pond, and chuckled. The sea is right beneath your feet. This pond? Chen Xia asked doubtfully. No. The old fisherman shook his head and smiled. It's the sea. The entire small pond in Chen Xia's sight gradually expanded. His ears twitched slightly, and he seemed to hear the roar of ocean waves. Amidst the faint sounds, there was the clang of swords. The hum of swords came from the sky. He looked up in astonishment, and between the vast sky and boundless sea, a sword hung suspended, spanning between heaven and earth. This is the Kanglitian Sword Sea. This was Chen Xia's second month in the Kanglitian Sword Sea. With his nascent soul cultivation, he was assigned to the shallow sea region. Responsible for catching fish, he was very satisfied. It was a good job, and only beyond hundreds of thousands of miles of shallow sea would one truly enter the deeper parts of the ocean. It was said that strange creatures were suppressed within, and no one below the Saint Realm should enter. Chen Xia had absolutely no intention of going in. He was content to just catch his fish and cultivate his techniques along the way. The giant tortoise breathing technique had now upgraded to become a tribulation level technique. It only took 300 years to cultivate it to the tribulation crossing stage. Besides the unappealing name, there was nothing else bad about it. In addition, Chen Xia also discovered a strange phenomenon. Spirit qi frequently seeped into his body from an unknown source, filling his entire body and raising his cultivation. At first, he was extremely puzzled. Later, when he comprehended this surge of spirit qi, he discovered its origin. Spirit qi transmitted from a minor grotto heaven. In this minor grotto heaven, he had become a god and chopped off a giant hand, and the spirit qi had recovered. Now was the time for it to provide feedback. It was as if a world was pushing Chen Xia to cultivate. The stronger Chen Xia became, the stronger this world would become. The reverse was also true. Chen Xia's eyes shone brightly. He had invented a perpetual motion machine. Chapter 41. Submerging into myriad worlds. Cultivating in the Kanglitian Sword Sea was incredibly dull. Fortunately, Chen Xia had long grown accustomed to boredom. Besides, he also had a colleague he could chat with. His colleague was an octopus, whose hobby was playing a leaf flute while standing on 6 legs. It was truly a wondrous sight. Chen Xia and the octopus thus caught fish within a 100-mile radius of the shallow sea. The process of catching fish was very ordinary, but the fish caught were not ordinary. It was said these were fish from the Sword Sea, containing sword qi, which could grant sword cultivators enlightenment. Chen Xia didn't care much about sword intent. He only knew that once caught, he'd eat them, and he couldn't sense any sword qi. The meat, however, was very fresh and delicious. Usually at such times, his octopus colleague would look at him with a strange gaze, its mouth slightly agape, as if wanting to say something, but then dejectedly closing its mouth. Chen Xia observed carefully, then offered the fish piece in his hand, asking, "Want a taste?" He was really quite polite. Bai Tuo tugged at his robe, gently shaking his head. "Nah, these aren't really from." Chen Xia didn't press further. Looking at Bai Tuo, he finally asked the question on his mind. What are we even catching fish for here? Bai Tuo adjusted the flute at his waist, his gaze profound as he said, "To forge swords." Chen Xia was utterly confused. What's that supposed to mean? Far out at sea, a shell shoal rose, 1,000 zang long. Just swimming near it stirred up fierce waves. Bai Tuqiu's 6 legs moved in unison. He drew the flute from his waist and walked towards the giant 1,000 zang shark. He replied at the same time, "This is the Sword Sea." Innumerable sword intent erupted within the Sword Sea. The seawater itself was sword chi. Fish were drawn to the swords. The larger the fish, the stronger the pressure, and the denser the sword intent. Without turning his head, he fully unsheathed his flute and walked towards the shark. Chen Xia anxiously cautioned, "So you're just going to run off and serenade that shark right now, huh?" Bai Tuqiu confidently retorted, "This isn't a musical instrument. It's my sword." With a sweep of the flute, a massive wave cleaved open the waters before him. With no more obstacles, he strode upon the sword sea. As he intended to wield his sword to cut down the 1,000 zang shark, Bai Tuqiu finally let out a mighty roar. "Today I'll either become the sword or become a legend." 3 breaths later, Bai Tuqiu had successfully vanished into the fish's belly. The sea surface grew tranquil, its waters glistening. Chen Xia watched as the 1,000 zang shark carried Bai Tuqiu away. He couldn't help but sigh in admiration for the companion he'd spent so many days with. "He's truly so brave, I'm crying my eyes out." And Bai Tuqiu's actions also made Chen Xia realize one thing: don't leave the shallow waters. It's best to stay put. So he stayed in these waters for 30 years, submerged in the water all day long, occasionally snacking on small fish and shrimp, never encountering another soul. This life, apart from being utterly boring, was just utterly boring. Chen Xia endured, gradually even adapting to it. By the 100th year, the old fisherman finally arrived. Staring at Chen Xia in astonishment, his brow furrowed as he asked, "You haven't moved an inch from this spot?" Without waiting for Chen Xia's reply, "It's been 100 years. Don't you know how to get up there yourself?" The old fisherman pointed at the giant sword hovering horizontally in the sky as he asked. Before Chen Xia could answer, the old fisherman raised an eyebrow, his tone a little impatient. "You're supposed to go up there for the sect entrance grand selection, aren't you? I brought you in. If you don't rank, how am I supposed to demand my rewards from the sect master?" Before Chen Xia could reply, the old fisherman grew even more puzzled. His figure flickered. He moved closer to Chen Xia and asked, "Are you a broken record or something?" Chen Xia sighed, half covering his face, and shook his head. "Cultivation isn't just about endless hacking and slashing," he said. "I feel I should be given a few more tens of thousands of years to prepare for tens of thousands of years." The old fisherman furrowed his brow. "Are you trying to send me to my grave?" he angrily spoke, then asked, "Chen Xia, with countless existences across the myriad worlds, if you don't contend, if you don't strive, what will you rely on to reach the peak? What will you rely on to rise?" Chen Xia replied earnestly, "As long as I outlive all of you, I'll be invincible." The old fisherman curled his lips and exasperatedly said, "Then you shouldn't cultivate these methods anymore. Go learn the turtle hiding technique. That one can truly endure." Chen Xia disagreed with this point. After all, the gigantic tortoise breathing art he learned was a life-preserving method. The old fisherman helplessly looked at him, pondered for a moment, then said, 500 years from now, during the grand selection, you must go. Otherwise, you'll be exiled to the deep waters of Jianhai. All right. Chen Xia immediately nodded, his expression serious. "I've decided to participate in the grand selection 500 years from now. My attitude isn't absolute. It can always change." The old fisherman nodded in satisfaction, his gaze sweeping over Chen Xia, then asked, "To what extent has your sword intent been refined?" "My xianxia Jianhai is a sword cultivation sect. Sword cultivators hold the dominant position, so you'd best still cultivate the sword." "No thanks." Chen Xia shook his head, looking at the old fisherman, and sincerely said, "Just let me live for a few tens of thousands of more years, and that'll be enough." The old fisherman sighed helplessly and said, "You don't understand. No great emperor supreme throughout history has ever ascended just by living long. They all fought their way up, step by step. Without innate talent, and without striving to contend, one can never reach the peak in their lifetime." Chen Xia looked at the old fisherman with a serious expression. His hand, which had covered his face, moved to rub the tip of his nose. He paused for a moment, then replied, "Perhaps they just haven't lived long enough." "This brat." The old fisherman shook his head, no longer wanting to persuade him. "Just leave Chen Xia alone." He stretched out his hand and pulled once, and heaven and earth reeled. Chen Xia lowered his head. Beneath his feet was a gigantic sword blade. He was on the peak of Kangtian. This time, among those participating in the grand selection, were many primordial races, even mythical races, and among them were 2 emperor seeds. "If you want to achieve a good ranking, you'll have to cultivate hard," the old fisherman replied. No, Chen Xia shook his head. "I don't want to. It's the old fisherman who wants a good ranking." The two stared at each other. The old fisherman's tone was unfriendly as he said, I'll give you a chance to rephrase that. Chen Xia nodded. I really want to. Attitudes like this can change at any time. That's more like it. The old fisherman nodded, and with his hands clasped behind his back, he then said, and the best way to cultivate is to descend into the myriad worlds. Time flows unevenly across the myriad worlds. The smaller the realm, the faster time passes. Time in our grand myriad heavens is only 8/10 of the immortal realms, while in some small realms, it can even reach a ratio of 1 to 100. 1 day in the grand myriad heavens, 100 days in a small realm. Chen Xia's eyes shone brightly, as if a door to a new world had opened. Is there really such a good thing? The old fisherman saw his delight, and shook his head, pouring cold water on him. Although that's the case, almost no one wants to descend to small realms, because their fated opportunities are too limited, and have long been divided up by the natives. For an outsider like you to go there, not only would your strength be suppressed, but you could also be killed by the locals. This isn't uncommon, and the risks simply outweigh the rewards. So, I advise you to go to a medium-tier realm. At least, there will be ample opportunities. No, I want to go to a small realm. Chen Xia shook his head, his eyes resolute. Opportunities mean nothing to me. I primarily enjoy challenging risks. The old fisherman was stunned for a moment, then shook his head after a long while. Damn it. You truly are a weirdo. Chapter 42. Currently enjoying KFC's luxury lunch. After accumulating points over 100 years, Chen Xia decided to pour all of them into his karmic luck, mainly for good fortune. Karmic luck value, 141. Receive the title, Son of Heavenly Axis. Son of Heavenly Axis. You are a son of heaven. Your karmic luck has reached a mystical level. Normally, it won't manifest, but the grander the event, the better your luck will be. This makes it perfect for gambling with your life. Chen Xia nodded, feeling he had gained another trump card, greatly easing his mind. His cultivation had reached the peak Nascent Soul realm. Thanks to the nurturing of the giant turtle, its techniques, and the spiritual chi of the small grotto heaven, his cultivation speed was shockingly fast. He was about to reach the cultivation level of an elder in the immortal realm. Regarding the division of realms, the old fisherman couldn't explain it clearly, only saying, above saints and below saints. Above saints meant stepping onto the emperor's path and achieving transcendence. Below saints, most were mere ants, not worth mentioning. Within the great myriad heavens, just in the azure heaven sword sea alone, there were 2 great emperor figures presiding. One resided in the highest reaches of the azure heaven, while the other was deep within the sword's sea. Chen Xia was arranged to live in the disciples' quarters on the sword's blade, groomed as a reserve disciple. In the disciples' quarters, there were a total of 100 reserve disciples, of all shapes and forms, simply a living encyclopedia of abnormal creatures. Only Chen Xia had the most plain and unadorned appearance. He didn't have trees growing on his head, nor a tail behind his back. This also led to Chen Xia being the most looked down upon. Coupled with his lazy nature, his most prominent trait was utter indifference. Thus, these strangely shaped reserve disciples didn't want to associate with Chen Xia. Even if they heard Chen Xia was the living seed great emperor, they didn't interact with him much. Living seed great emperors are never in short supply. What's truly lacking are great emperors. Chen Xia was also happy to be idle, sitting by his door cultivating each day, waiting for the myriad world's descent ceremony. He didn't have to wait too long. The old fisherman arrived with a Taoist meditation mat, telling Chen Xia to sit on it and just let his divine sense sink in. What's the principle behind this? Chen Xia asked curiously. Do you want a scientific explanation or a non-scientific one? The old fisherman asked. He spoke in sci-tech terms. Chen Xia pondered for a moment, then replied, Scientific. The old fisherman responded. According to the thesis of the Mecha Great Saint from the sci-tech system, human spiritual sense can be divided into countless parts, and each part can independently enter a world. The method of world travel is related to the time system. The nuclear-powered Immortal once explained, time is relative. Alright, I get it now. The old fisherman hadn't even finished speaking when Chen Xia quickly interrupted. The old fisherman shot him a glance, then asked, Do you want to hear an unscientific explanation? Chen Xia shook his head. No need. This setting was unscientific from the moment it appeared, especially the moment the Mecha Great Sage and the nuclear-powered Immortal showed up. It elevated the unscientific nature to a whole new level. The old fisherman nodded. Then prepare to sync your divine sense. Allocate 1% of your divine sense, and you'll naturally find it. That minor world has a time flow accelerated by 100 times. Okay. Chen Xia nodded, concentrating his mind, and began to control his divine sense to split. He precisely split off 1% of his divine sense, and it was this fragment that began to traverse the myriad worlds. If each of the myriad worlds is considered a speck of light, then what Chen Xia sought was the tiny speck of light among them. His divine sense quickly swept through, sifting through the information of the myriad worlds, searching rapidly. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he finally spotted a tiny sphere of light, sparkling solitarily in a forgotten corner. Chen Xia's divine sense surged, plunging straight into this tiny sphere of light. A torrent of memories poured into his divine sense. In 301 AD, a meteorite fell, bringing with it supernatural abilities. Humans gained incredibly powerful abilities, becoming brawny, breathing fire, creating ice. In contrast to their immense power, their temperaments also grew violent, and they began to violate rules and laws. In 310 AD, ability users revolted, and the world collapsed. In the first decade of the new century, a new government established the Ye Ying organization, specializing in hunting down wanted ability users. Chen Xia was a novice Ye Ying, just 16 years old, and having recently passed his assessment. At this moment, he was on the street, facing a panicked, fleeing crowd. "Run! The ability users are here! Get out of the way! Run!" Various panicked shouts echoed, and the terrified crowd scattered without any order. No one paid attention to the stampedes, because behind them was an even more terrifying existence. The raging flames of the ability users occasionally flared up, exploding buildings and shattering glass. Cars were claiming people's lives at an alarming speed. Chen Xia frowned. An insistent thought resounded within him, urging him to protect the people. After a moment's thought, he guessed this thought must be the will of heaven and earth. As an individual from an outer world who had arrived in this minor world, and whose identity had been arranged by the heavenly Dakao, he immediately had to act in accordance with this identity, otherwise he might be rejected by the will of heaven and earth. Chen Xia's identity was that of a Ye Ying of the new government, so naturally, he had to protect the people. There were no other Ye Yings around. Chen Xia was forced to act. All his physical stats were only 1% of his true body's. Strength is 3, and the cultivation realm is Qi condensation, 5th layer. That should be enough, right? Chen Xia's footsteps moved forward, going against the panicked crowd, heading towards the blazing flames, pushing deeper into the chaos. More and more charred corpses lay strewn on the ground, devoid of life. A figure madly brandished flames, which erupted from their hands with loud explosions, chasing the fleeing crowd, until he met Chen Xia. "Hey!" Chen Xia muttered something politely, then casually pulled a steel pipe from a nearby pile of junk and pointed it at the fireperson. The fireperson's cruel face twisted into a sneer. "Welcome to the barbecue of sorrow." Chen Xia frowned. This guy's more than a little twisted. A sudden burst of flames shot towards him, a scorching heat tearing at his flesh. Chen Xia's body ducked down, his slightly lowered arm suddenly swung up, and the steel pipe whizzed through the air, hitting the fireperson's head with a thwack. Fresh blood splattered. Chen Xia lunged forward, already in front of the fireperson, grabbing the falling steel pipe. Gripping it with both hands, he slammed it down with all his might again. The fireperson's head was knocked askew in a bizarre way, but his body showed no change, still standing ramrod straight, his crazed eyes fixed on Chen Xia. And once again, a sneer appeared. So another steel pipe slammed down, and the fireperson's head bizarrely spun 180 degrees, still smiling. He even spewed ferocious flames, melting the steel pipe. "I'll roast you into a fragrant dish. Crispy on the outside, tender on the inside." The fireperson sneered again. "No need." A massive fist appeared before the fireperson's eyes, followed by a destructive force even greater than the steel pipe, crushing his head inward. His body, unable to resist, collapsed to the ground. Chen Xia followed up, relentless and incredibly rapid punches raining down on the fireperson's head, completely disregarding the scorching flames. He muttered, "I guess you've never seen what Wing Chun is truly like." The fireperson's head was repeatedly slammed into the ground, sinking deeper and deeper. His sneer gradually turned into pathetic wails. His body thrashed, but he grew increasingly powerless to resist. The flames gradually weakened until they extinguished completely, and he lost his breath. Chen Xia stood up, lifting his burned and peeling hands. He put his hands on his hips, staring at the charred, fragrant corpse of the fireperson. Guess he's joined the party now. Chen Xia, a grade 1 nightingale who just passed his 2-day assessment. His skill is strength enhancement. "So you just punched a C-rank fireperson to death like that?" The intelligence officer who came to take notes looked at 16-year-old Chen Xia, his expression full of disbelief. Chen Xia casually nodded, glancing at the fireperson's charred corpse. He paused for a moment, then explained, "You can't generalize human physiques. I just punched him to death when I was super angry." The intelligence officer assessed Chen Xia with a skeptical gaze, truly unable to fathom how such formidable power could reside in the skinny body of this 16-year-old youth. At this, he couldn't help but shake his head. As a nightingale, the most important thing is to control your emotions. Although anger can make people stronger, there's also a risk of losing control. Later, go to headquarters for a health check. See if your stats have changed. "All right. Got it." Chen Xia nodded and asked, So, can I go home now? He planned to carefully reorganize his understanding of this world. Only then would he have a solid grasp. The intelligence officer agreed. Killing the fire person is no small feat. Later, you can come to headquarters to claim 2 enhancement potions. Chen Xia nodded and didn't linger. Following the memories granted by the world's will, he wandered around for a while and found his residence, under an overpass. Beneath it lay a thin blanket and a torn mat. Only then did Chen Xia remember his background setting. He was an orphan. Because he had suffered injustice since childhood, he had vowed to become an ally of justice. Just 2 days ago, he had just joined the Nightingales with qualifying scores, becoming the most mediocre Grade 1 member, and the Nightingales didn't provide room and board. Chen Xia rubbed the tip of his nose, sighing, "Better off in a screw factory." This is the truth. Chen Xia walked under the overpass, looking around. Actually, it was quite well equipped, arranged like a small home with tables and chairs, and even an old broken-down rice cooker. It just didn't have electricity. Chen Xia sat on the old mat and began to check his own status. His strength was 3.9. His realm was the 5th layer of qi condensation, and all his stats were decent. True dragon qi, 40%. It could only be used after he had fully integrated into this new world. The content in the parentheses was quite interesting. Chen Xia had to fully integrate into this world before he could use it. And the condition for fully integrating into the world, Chen Xia speculated, was likely to play the role assigned to him by the world's will. Well, he just didn't know how long it would take to fully integrate. Chen Xia continued to look inside his body, his expression suddenly freezing as he discovered something that pleasantly surprised him. Karmic luck. 141. His karmic luck hadn't decreased. It was exactly like before. Good. Chen Xia was extremely satisfied. This meant he had another trump card, and there was something else that pleasantly surprised him. What's more, the spiritual energy from the former Wu Ji Little Grotto Heaven was still being transmitted into his body. Although it was only 1%, this was the spiritual energy of a small world. Moreover, Chen Xia's current body was very weak, so he could constantly feel himself gradually becoming stronger. Chen Xia sat there quietly, lightly rubbing the tip of his nose, beginning to ponder this world's settings. Ability users were probably considered part of the Psi-Tech system in the Great Myriad Heavens, on the same level as Mecha Great Sages and Quantum Ancestors. Him, a cultivator, fighting people from the Psi-Tech system. Did that even make sense? Chen Xia thought for a moment and felt that it actually made perfect sense. As a cultivator before, he could even deal with martial artists. So why couldn't he fight fire-breathing, lightning-wielding foes now? Chen Xia stretched and stood up from the mat, then leaned against the wall and casually poked his head out to look around. This was a world of ability users. Ever since the meteorite fell, 1 out of every 1,000 people born in the new century would possess an ability. Abilities varied in strength and type, but there was a taboo. The stronger an ability user was, the easier it was for them to go berserk. But the Ye Ying, created by the new government, were different. They would use drugs to enhance and control ability users. These were enhancement drugs. Ability users who took enhancement drugs could become calmer and stronger. However, Chen Xia felt this method didn't seem like a good thing. What kind of BS logic was it to become strong just by taking drugs? Even if he could add points, he still had to rely on his own cultivation. Besides, did enhancement drugs really have no side effects? Chen Xia remained skeptical. Either way, he definitely wouldn't take them. By the time dusk fell, night faded, and dawn broke, Chen Xia had basically spent a day in this world. He could feel that the connection between himself and this world had deepened a little. Today was the Ye Ying Assembly, and Chen Xia had to go to the new government headquarters in his district. To act the part, Chen Xia arrived at the new government headquarters early. Seeing the doors weren't open yet, he started chatting with the night shift security guard, back and forth. "Do you know the 3 golden rules of a security guard?" Chen Xia asked. The young security guard frowned, finding this a very interesting question. After a long pause for thought, he finally looked directly at Chen Xia and said seriously and solemnly, "Help lost delivery drivers. Allow residents freedom of speech. If you encounter a villain, fight for your life." Wow, that's something else. All completely backward. Chen Xia didn't know whether to praise or criticize him for a moment. After being stunned, he shook his head and replied, "You'll never become a qualified security guard." "Why?" the confused security guard asked, but received no answer. Because the door had already opened, Chen Xia walked inside, preparing to attend the Ye Ying Assembly. His clothes were a bit old, as he hadn't received his Ye Ying uniform yet, so he looked out of place among the others. Passers-by also cast strange glances at him. Chen Xia stood still, unmoving, leaning against the wall with a lazy demeanor. In his own words, it was propping up the wall without actually committing. Brain totally waterlogged. "Chen Xia, right? Go change into this uniform first." A supervisor walked over and handed Chen Xia a set of clothes. Chen Xia acknowledged and took them, then went into the restroom to change. The Yi Ying uniform was a black suit, with a name tag on the left chest to indicate identity.
Chen Xia tied his tie, his size 42 feet now in size 43 black leather shoes, and slowly walked out.
The supervisor glanced at him, nodded, and said, "Not bad. The clothes fit and you look sharp. It's just that your demeanor needs a bit more enthusiasm. Don't be so lazy."
Yeah.
Chen Xia nodded dismissively. He looked at the wall beside him, and, without a second thought, leaned against it again, making the supervisor burst out laughing helplessly. He waved his hand and said, All right, go attend the assembly. You're probably the only one missing. Later, you'll give a self-introduction."
Chen Xia followed the indicated path to a thick, heavy door. The door was slightly ajar. Chen Xia slowly stepped inside, and in just a moment, he could feel several sharp gazes evaluating him.
"Go ahead and introduce yourself." Suddenly, a teasing voice rang out.
Chen Xia immediately stepped onto the platform,
looked at everyone, and calmly said, "My name is Chen Xia, 16 years old, living right under the Nantong overpass. I'm unmarried, don't smoke, my fingers are a little longer than average. I'm always home before 10 p.m. I make sure to get 10 hours of sleep every day. I never stay up late, I just pull all-nighters. My greatest wish is..." As Chen Xia said this, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, and his lazy voice gained a touch of seriousness.
"No work, no studies, clothes brought straight to my hands, food spoon-fed into my mouth." Murmurs of dissatisfaction arose from below.
"What kind of twisted thoughts are you having? Nightingale isn't that kind of organization. Fix your attitude now." Chen Xia's mind trembled. He clearly felt the world's will rejecting him, realizing that his words earlier probably didn't fit his character's established persona. So his face fell, and he looked completely disheartened. "My greatest wish is to become a companion of justice," he replied perfunctorily, then added, half dead, with a final sigh. Did Chen Xia really want to become a companion of justice? Everyone below the stage could see it. Or rather, they didn't even need to look. Just hearing Chen Xia's listless voice was enough to tell he didn't want to. Chen Xia didn't want to either, but he was suppressed by the world's will, so he had no choice.
He sighed helplessly, walking to the seat with his name on it and slumping down listlessly, even his eyes looking a bit dull. After all, he had just uttered words that had damaged his Dacio heart. Of course, this Dao heart was merely a metaphor. It wouldn't actually destroy his Dao heart. Chen Xia didn't even have a Dao heart to begin with anyway. Then, an old man stepped onto the podium, presumably some official leader, reading out the merits of the Nightingales over the past month. C-rank Red Rabbit captured a C-rank Black Fox ability user, 3rd class merit. C-rank Green Cat eliminated a masked Berserker ability user, 3rd class merit.
And the last spot on this list of merits belonged to Chen Xia, who had eliminated the Pyromancer yesterday.
The old man looked up at Chen Xia, who was almost shrinking under the table in the back, then shook his head helplessly and continued. Chen Xia, level 1, eliminated a Berserker Pyromancer, 3rd class merit.
As soon as these words were spoken, the Nightingales below the stage all turned to look at Chen Xia, their eyes unable to hide their surprise. The Pyromancer was an entity on Nightingale's wanted list, a C-rank ability user. They found it hard to believe that a level 1 newcomer could kill a C-rank Pyromancer. Chen Xia's figure was nowhere to be seen. He had completely slipped under the table. "Dismissed!" the old man's voice rang out. Chen Xia immediately stood up, refreshed, and quickly walked out the door.
"Chen Xia, wait!"
a voice called out. Chen Xia wanted to pretend not to hear, but feared the world's will would reject him again. Having no choice, he reluctantly stopped in his tracks. He hadn't expected that a simple Jia Chen Wanji could cause such great damage to his Dao heart. A supervisor walked towards Chen Xia, holding an envelope-shaped object, and said in a serious tone, "Next, you have to carry out a mission." Chen Xia's face fell, a forced smile on his lips, displaying 3 parts helplessness, 4 parts unwillingness, and a hefty 93% sure fine compliance. It was hard to imagine such a medley of expressions appearing on a single face. The supervisor smiled and said, "Don't worry, this mission is very simple, and there's an experienced person to guide you. Come here." The supervisor waved his hand, and heavy footsteps resounded from the ground. A figure over 2 meters tall, built like a tank, walked out of the room and stood before Chen Xia. Chen Xia frowned. An ape stood before him. "Hello!" Jingjing took off his hat, his rough face smiling at Chen Xia. "I'm C-rank Nightingale, Captain Jingjing. Damn, I've practically become a spirit already." Chen Xia let out a soft exclamation, but quickly regained his composure, and politely replied to Captain Jingjing, "Hello, hello." The supervisor, seeing that the two had gotten acquainted, chuckled, and said, "Next, you two will be carrying out a mission together." Captain Jingjing is a seasoned veteran who has completed hundreds of missions. The newcomer can follow along and learn a thing or two. All right. Chen Xia nodded reluctantly. The supervisor gave a few more instructions, then turned and left. Captain Jingjing put his hat back on and suggested to Chen Xia, "How about we go over the mission details together and prepare thoroughly beforehand?" Chen Xia naturally agreed,
and the two immediately opened the envelope and began to study its contents.
Master Guangxi of the new government will hold an academic seminar next week. Your task is to ensure proper security throughout the seminar.
Captain Jingjing rubbed his chin and nodded confidently.
It's just a simple security mission. I've done this a few times before, no problem at all, Chen Xia asked. Just the two of us?
Captain Jingjing shook his head.
Logically, other nightingales will join the mission. Besides, Master Guangxi will surely bring his own security personnel. There won't be any issues.
Chen Xia glanced at the mission brief again, beginning to scrutinize every single word of security work.
Doesn't this mean we're basically glorified security guards?
Captain Jingjing nodded.
Pretty much. But don't be discouraged. Being a security guard is a pretty decent job. Discouraged? Chen Xia certainly wasn't. The number one profession in his heart was being a security guard. He even knew the 3 golden rules of security guards by heart.
He was practically beaming with joy, a truly rare sight.
Seeing him so happy, Captain Jingjing also laughed along. Fortunately, he had no idea what Chen Xia's 3 golden rules of security guards actually were. The two walked out of headquarters side by side, chatting idly as they went. Captain Jingjing, with his hands clasped behind his back, walked with a straight back, not unlike a human, and chuckled lightly at Chen Xia.
You're a new recruit.
Although your rating is only level 1, don't be discouraged. The strength of one's supernatural ability is actually equivalent to one's mental power. You can slowly train your mental power to enhance your supernatural ability. What's more, supernatural ability users who ascend through this method are the least prone to going berserk.
Supernatural ability users who start with powerful innate talent often go berserk under emotional provocation, because their mental power is too vast for them to control.
Chen Xia nodded. He currently had no intention of following the path of supernatural abilities, still intent on continuing to cultivate money.
Captain Jingjing stopped walking, pulled out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, flicked one out, put it in his mouth, and asked Chen Xia if he wanted one.
It's banana-flavored.
Chen Xia was originally going to refuse, but upon hearing banana-flavored, he couldn't resist, and immediately asked Captain Jingjing for one.
And so, the two stood under the street lamp, chatting away.
Captain Jingjing exhaled a puff of smoke, then smiled and asked,
"Guess what my supernatural ability is?" Chen Xia held the banana-flavored cigarette between 2 fingers, flicked the ash, and speculated about the ability to transform into an ape. Captain Tintin remained silent, leaning against the lamppost, cigarette smoke obscuring his face. After a long moment, he slowly shook his head, his voice distant. "If only it were that. But unfortunately, it's not."
Chen Xia shook his head.
"Then I can't guess. With so many abilities in the world, how am I supposed to figure it out?"
Captain Tintin said nothing, just taking deep drags of his cigarette.
The smoke he exhaled was faint, but as it accumulated, it grew thicker, obscuring his features and his rugged face.
Without seeing his face, he was just a tall, burly, ordinary man. The cigarette burned down fast, leaving only a faint glowing stub, like a dream.
The dense screen of smoke dispersed, revealing Captain Tintin's rugged face. Only then did he speak in a low, deep voice, laden with a profound sense of gravity. "My ability is to transform into a human."
Chen Xia furrowed his brow, utterly perplexed.
"Isn't that practically the same thing?"
Captain Tintin paused for a beat. Then a joyful smile spread across his face as he asked, "You really think they're almost the same?"
Chen Xia nodded, nonchalantly replying, "No difference." Hey. A joyful smile appeared on Captain Tintin's face as he tucked the cigarette back into his chest pocket and at the same time told Chen Xia, "Don't smoke anymore. Smoking is bad for your health."
Indeed, Chen Xia nodded, extinguished the remaining half-smoked cigarette, and tossed it into the trash can.
As the two were about to part ways, Captain Tintin suddenly exclaimed, "After this mission is over, I'm going to retire, go back to my hometown, and get married." Chen Xia froze at his words. "Dude, don't jinx it." Chapter 45. My wish is to graduate as a virgin. Chen Xia had already started working as a security guard. He was patrolling the outer perimeter of the building with Captain Tintin. This building had a total of 30 floors. The academic conference was taking place inside, but no one told them which specific floor. They just needed to guard the outer perimeter. Chen Xia bent down to wipe the mud off his leather shoes, then casually tossed the cloth into a nearby trash can. It was night now, and the wind was quite strong, making his tie flutter.
Captain Tintin sat on the railing, smoking, his eyes casually sweeping the surroundings, noting every movement.
Nighttime was when they needed to be most vigilant. One moment of carelessness could be exploited by malicious individuals.
Chen Xia stretched and leaned against the railing. When he was free, he started to circulate the giant turtle breathing technique, simply doing a bit of cultivation.
You ask why he wasn't paying attention to his surroundings? Because he was a security guard. A security guard couldn't protect anyone. They only needed to protect themselves well. Among the 3 golden rules of security guards, Chen Xia could disregard 2 of them. But the last one he would strictly adhere to: safely retreating when encountering hostiles. This was professional ethics. Chen Xia sighed, feeling that in the obscure depths, Heaven's will truly had its own designs.
He worked as a constable in a wuxia subrealm, and as a guard in a world of superpowers. This kind of work was practically tailor-made for him. Chen Xia couldn't help but feel smug, thinking that the myriad realms of Xia Chen was truly amazing. For him, it was high reward, low risk. Even if he died, he'd only lose 1% of his spiritual sense at most, which could be recovered later.
Meanwhile, his main body in the Azure Heaven Sword Sea could still accumulate points and automatically cultivate its realm year after year. He was essentially dual cultivating right now.
Captain Xing finished his cigarette, his eyes ceaselessly appraising Chen Xia.
After a long hesitation, he quietly asked, "Do you really think there's no difference between an ability turning you into a human and turning you into an ape?"
Chen Xia furrowed his brow.
Didn't expect Captain Xing was still bothered by this, he said, then offered an analogy. "Do you feel there's a difference between a human demon and a demon human?"
Captain Xing pondered carefully, musing for a moment before quietly saying,
"It sounds like there's no difference, but fundamentally, there must be a distinction, right? For me, there's no difference,"
Chen Xia casually replied, then looked at Captain Xing and asked with a hint of doubt, "Are you lacking confidence?"
That remark hit him right where it hurt.
Captain Xing fell silent,
his rugged face etched with sorrow. He lowered his head, and after a long while, mumbled in reply,
"Because I'm not human, they always worry I'll go berserk. They think I'm uncontrollable, an extreme danger."
I should have. Captain Xing's voice grew fainter, as if all his strength had been drained, as he finally muttered, "I should have been locked in a cage."
Chen Xia adjusted his tie, which the wind had slightly askew, and chuckled. "If it's a spacious cage with 3 rooms and a hall, I'd want to move in faster than you." Captain Xing didn't reply, his sturdy form perched on the railing. He pulled another cigarette from his pack, his expression utterly sorrowful, not uttering a single word.
Chen Xia stepped closer, embracing the howling night winds, and asked with a smile, "You really care about this, don't you?"
Captain Xing mumbled a nod. He truly did care. After a moment he whispered, "I'm not human, after all. A lot of people look at me with weird eyes. Who knows what they're thinking?"
Chen Xia shrugged it off, then smiled and said, "Who knows? Maybe in another world, tons of people would think you're totally badass."
"Really?" Captain Xing asked, a glimmer of joy in his voice. "Who knows?"
Chen Xia gave a similar answer.
The night wind continued to blow, and the building appeared utterly silent, not a single sound breaking the stillness. Chen Xia looked at the towering building against the pitch-black night, and a question arose in his mind. What kind of academic conference needs to be held at night?
What's more, while he was on guard earlier, he'd seen plenty of beautiful young women heading upstairs for this academic conference. Is this even legitimate?
Chen Xia highly doubted its legitimacy. The relentless night wind swirled around the building.
Chen Xia thought to himself, if someone wanted to assassinate, they definitely wouldn't come on the first day, nor the last, but rather during the dull, uneventful days in between. This is when people are most prone to laziness. Of course, Chen Xia wasn't among them, because he was always lazy anyway. And so, the first day passed peacefully. On the second day, Chen Xia arrived late, his excuse being that he needed a full 10 hours of sleep. This was something he'd actually mentioned in his personal bio.
Not only did Captain Xing not scold him, but he even comforted him, saying, "If you're too tired, just get some extra rest before coming. I can handle guarding alone."
"Good," Chen Xia replied, and sure enough, on the third day, he was late once more.
Captain Xing whispered advice, saying if it was due to insomnia, he could try soaking his feet before bed and massaging acupuncture points.
His advice was very gentle. Afraid of disturbing Chen Xia again, Chen Xia suddenly asked curiously, "How did you get your superpower?" It seemed that the existence of superpower users who could fly was very rare globally. This was something he had found out after researching for the past 2 days. A reminiscent expression appeared on Captain Xing's rough face as he slowly told Chen Xia, "My homeland is in the jungle, where my pack resides, with green mountains, clear waters, and lush flowers and plants. Of course, none of that has anything to do with me, because I was born in a laboratory, a test subject for enhancement drugs. I'm the luckiest test subject, because only I succeeded.
Ye Ying requested my release, and I gained the identity of Captain Xing."
Chen Xia nodded, feeling this was quite a decent story. A look of loss appeared on Captain Xing's rough face as he continued, "I once said something like this." He repeated it after this mission. Quote, "I'm going back home to get married." "I think it's better not to blurt out such things," Chen Xia commented. The look of loss on Captain Xing's face reached its peak at this moment. A grieving expression, as he shook his head like the tolling of a heavy, dull bell. He pitifully said, "That was a joke, I can't go. Every time I go on a mission, I say that. Maybe it's because I hope I actually can go." "You declared your wish on stage, didn't you?"
Chen Xia leaned against the railing, his tie fluttering in the wind, and nodded.
Captain Xing sighed. I truly admire you. To be able to openly declare your wish in front of everyone. Actually, I have a wish too. Do you want to hear it? Go ahead and say it.
Chen Xia leaned against the wall. Captain Xing hesitated for a moment. Can you promise not to laugh at me?
I promise. Chen Xia nodded. Captain Xing composed himself, constantly exhaling, as if articulating his wish was incredibly difficult for him. After a long wait, he finally gathered his courage and loudly declared,
My wish is to lose my virginity, damn it!
Chen Xia looked at him reproachfully and negotiated. Can I take back my promise just now? Chapter 46. Shi Ting. Your wish shouldn't be hard to achieve, right? Chen Xia asked doubtfully.
It's just losing your virginity.
Many people at 18, even before 25, wish to lose their virginity. Of course, after 25, that's a different story. If he still hadn't lost his virginity by 25, Chen Xia advised him to preserve his virgin's yang, because this was actually very natural. No, he wouldn't count that.
Captain Xing nodded, rubbing his chin. As you said, should I be with one of my own kind, or with a human?
This problem was indeed very difficult, because Captain Xing was truly too robust in every aspect, so Chen Xia was also a bit at a loss for words. Captain Xing wore an extremely distressed expression, muttering, If it's with one of my kind, my heart won't accept it. But if it's with a human, my biology won't accept it. Your problem truly is a bit difficult.
Chen Xia agreed, and the two of them then offered their own insights on this matter. Chen Xia felt that if Captain Xing could get over it, he might consider going into the forest and starting a harem. Captain Xing nodded.
Sounds good. Once I'm free, I'll go into the forest.
Good.
Chen Xia nodded. Actually, dying isn't so bad, huh? I heard you can transmigrate to another time. Captain Xing suddenly spoke. Where do you want to transmigrate to? Chen Xia pondered the question. An expression of longing appeared on Captain Xing's face.
The second dimension, of course. I heard there are star girls there.
Chen Xia fell silent, not wanting to comment further. I heard you're an orphan, right?
Still under the overpass, Captain Xing suddenly asked with concern. Chen Xia leaned against the railing, turning his head to look down at the building. He smelled an unusual wind. Captain Xing gave a kind smile. After this mission, come to my place. I still have 2 spare rooms.
Chen Xia didn't reply, because the wind was getting strong.
Boom!
A loud noise suddenly erupted from inside the building. Fire spread, and shattered glass scattered everywhere.
Captain Xing immediately sprang into action, charging into the building without a second thought. At the same time, he shouted to Chen Xia, Wait for me here! If there's danger, run first yourself, don't mind me.
He didn't wait for Chen Xia's reply before charging inside the donghua. Chen Xia stood up and headed outwards. He didn't want to get involved. As for Captain Xing, he should be able to protect himself.
Thinking this, Chen Xia walked to the main entrance of the donghua. He planned to wait a little longer, then run away. That way the world's will wouldn't reject him. Through Chen Xia's 2-day trial, he had discovered the world's will's rejection rule.
As long as he didn't do anything abnormal, the world's will's influence on him would be minimal.
For example,
he, a nightingale who had aspired to be a justice ally since childhood, definitely couldn't do bad things that didn't fit his character setting.
Of course, just running away like that wouldn't do either. It was too lacking in a sense of justice, so Chen Xia planned to wait a little longer before running. That way, the new government officials wouldn't suspect him either. After all, he was just a level 1 nightingale. If he didn't run, what else could he do? He took out a banana-flavored cigarette from his chest pocket, the same kind as Captain Xing's, intending to smoke 2 before leaving.
But just as he lit the first one, someone arrived at the main door, wearing a pale mask and with a burly physique, carrying a man-sized chainsaw. It was as if, I want to kill people, was written all over his face.
Chen Xia's face remained expressionless. He just needed to treat this person as a normal person, and that way, he wouldn't trigger the world's will's rejection. So he opened the door, and politely said to the chainsaw man, Welcome. From behind the pale mask, the burly chainsaw man let out a sinister chuckle.
You little bug, I'm gonna dismember you and hang you on the main door. Chen Xia lowered his head, pretending not to hear, and continued. Academic conference. Please proceed to the 13th floor. He casually made up a floor. I'm going to kill you, ha.
The roar of the chainsaw, like a death knell, rapidly approached Chen Xia. Chen Xia was getting a bit pissed off. He looked up and kicked down the iron fence beside him, grabbed an iron rod, flicked away the cigarette in his mouth, and casually stomped it out.
If they really wanted to piss him off, next time he came to this world, it wouldn't just be a mere wisp of his divine sense.
He'd just flip the table.
And then no one would get to play anymore.
The chainsaw's roar was getting closer, its buzzing filling his ears. Chen Xia looked up, gripping the rod with both hands and swinging it in a furious flurry of strikes, cutting through the air with a whistling sound that even drowned out the chainsaw's noise.
The sound of shattering bones echoed consecutively. With a single swing, he sent the white-clad chainsaw man crashing to his knees, half of his shoulder torn off. Chen Xia tossed aside the bent iron rod, lit a cigarette, and asked, "Are you always this brave?" There was no reply, because the chainsaw man was already half dead, uttering indistinct whimpers.
He probably never imagined that a casual wisp of his killing intent would provoke a terrifying existence from beyond this world like Chen Xia.
It was like going excitedly to your own fish pond to fish, only to get a bite, and when you reeled it in, you found out it was a goddamn giant shark. "Damn you, chainsaw man," he probably thought, breathing his last with that exact sentiment.
Chen Xia exhaled a puff of smoke, curled a finger in front of the chainsaw man's face, and flicked it, completely ending his half-dead life. He turned his head to look at Dao Chapter, then considered whether he should go help Captain Jing a bit. Probably no need, right?
He frowned and mused. Reincarnating into a 2D world is indeed one of Jing's dreams. I still shouldn't interfere. He thought so, but often, things don't go as smoothly as planned. The building began to explode floor by floor, glass shattered, and flames engulfed the sky.
Chen Xia raised a hand in front of him, blocking the flying shards of glass.
His pupils narrowed. He saw a figure rapidly descending. The wind howled. A piercing roar filled the air. Flames danced, and the figure, wreathed in burning fire, plummeted, crashing to the ground with a boom!
Chen Xia tilted his head and looked. It was Captain Jing. His face was etched with horror.
He opened his mouth and shouted at Chen Xia, "Run!" Without Chen Xia needing to calmly reply, he lightly flicked his nose, and the bent iron rod on the ground flew into his grasp.
He patted the dust off the shoulders of his vest.
In front of him, a black shadow had already appeared,
standing perfectly still before the grand entrance, its gaze utterly cold,
like the biting cold of winter, staring intensely at Chen Xia.
"If possible, please retract your rude gaze. It will make your eventual death a little more comfortable,"
Chen Xia advised him. The black shadow said nothing, and gracefully advanced. A slender arm extended from its robe, and in a cold, emotionless, declarative tone, it said,
"The coffin business doesn't allow for any loose ends at the scene.
These are our rules. I always follow the rules."
Black Shadow Shuizhong's words were unhurried. Both hands slowly extended from its wide sleeves. Around them, shattered glass fell, flames danced, and a pale aura began to spread.
With a whoosh, all these things froze.
Chen Xia, carrying the bent iron rod, already flashed in front of the black shadow.
In the depths of its pupils, a clear radiance peaked, and with a loud bang, the iron rod shattered. The flames resumed their dance, and the black shadow crashed into the door, breaking through the wall.
Chen Xia pulled a cigarette from the pack, lit it with a small flickering flame nearby, and put it in his mouth.
"If you don't struggle, your privilege has already shown off everything for you. What's left for me to prove?" 4 chapters updated today. Thanks for your support, brothers. Really appreciate it. Any brothers want to reincarnate into the second dimension? Chapter 47. Time froze across the entire world, and the fireman fell to the ground, appearing utterly dead. To avoid being discovered and causing unnecessary trouble, Chen Xia quickly withdrew from the scene. This small world was essentially a secluded cultivation spot. He definitely didn't want to invite more trouble.
Even if this small world's strength was very weak, he still shouldn't cause any more complications.
He wandered around the small world. There was nothing special about it. It was just an extremely ordinary small world, with only a bit of transcendent power, and he didn't sense the existence of any particularly formidable strength. The world will's repulsion towards Chen Xia wasn't significant, which meant he could slowly linger in this small world, cultivating peacefully and gaining insights. The shadow figure was deeply embedded in the cracked wall, as fragments of concrete plaster rattled down.
He stared with incredulous eyes at the young man in the oversized black suit, who was leisurely smoking in front of him.
His special ability was manipulating shadows and static space, an absolute S-rank power that could assassinate any nightingale in an instant.
But just a moment ago, he didn't even see how this young man made his move. There were no fluctuations of special ability, no elemental changes, just a pure swing of an iron rod, carrying a physical power that devoured everything.
Chen Xia held the banana-flavored cigarette between 2 fingers, exhaling a wisp of smoke that drifted in the air, his clear, calm eyes watching the shadow figure.
He stepped forward, using his thick, size 43 shoe toe to tap the broken wall.
"I already said, I'm a security guard who adheres strictly to rules. You coming here to disrupt an academic conference is smashing my rice bowl. A security guard losing his rice bowl has very serious consequences."
The shadow figure gritted his teeth, a strange growl escaping his throat. His body suddenly shattered into countless black bats, carrying dark flames, intending to escape into the night.
Faced with this bizarre power, Chen Xia simply extended his hand. "Time stop," the 2 words softly echoed, yet they carried the supreme laws of the great Dao. The countless black bats froze in midair, maintaining their twisted, wing-flapping postures.
Chen Xia stepped forward, raised the bent iron rod, and forcefully smashed down on them, one by one. Thwack! 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 Explosive sounds continuously echoed. Each bat was smashed to pulp, turning into blood and bone. In just 3 breaths, the darkness dispersed, and the shadow figure was forced back into his true form, collapsing to the ground, his entire body's bones shattered, gasping for breath. Captain Jingjing then stumbled out from the wreckage, his jet-black fur scorched in many places. A large shard of broken glass was still embedded in his shoulder, and fresh blood flowed profusely, staining his entire suit red.
He looked at the shadow figure lying on the ground, then at Chen Xia, who was tapping his cigarette ash. His rough face showed dumbfounded shock. You! Exactly what rank is your special ability? Chen Xia threw the cigarette butt on the ground, stomped it out with his thick heel, and waved his hand. I don't have special abilities, I just have innate divine strength, plus a bit of luck, that's all.
After speaking, he walked over to Captain Jingjing, extended a finger, and lightly touched his wound.
A wisp of spiritual energy from Chen Xia's grotto heaven was guided directly into the giant ape's body.
The glass shards were pushed out, and its flesh rapidly healed at a visible rate.
Captain Ape's jaw dropped in astonishment, his mouth wide enough to swallow a watermelon. Is this also innate divine strength? Chen Xia nodded seriously and said, Indeed, my divine power has a healing effect, specializing in external injuries. He said no more, turning his head to look up at the pitch-black night sky.
Through 1% of his divine sense, Chen Xia detected an otherworldly aura rapidly approaching.
An aura of decay, greed, and destructive malice. He suddenly understood the origin of the meteorite carrying supernatural powers that fell decades ago. That wasn't a natural disaster but a seed planted by a wandering cosmic harvester.
That entity sent meteorites carrying what was called supernatural power to small worlds, forcing the living beings there to evolve, and absorbing the fate and cosmic luck of those worlds. Once the supernatural users developed to a certain extent, and the world entered a state of utter chaos, the harvester would personally descend to devour this entire ripe fruit.
The coffin organization was likely the pawns nurtured by the harvesters in this world to accelerate the turmoil.
Sure enough, in the very next moment, the night sky above the city suddenly tore open, revealing a gigantic rift.
The sky was no longer black, but it turned a deep blood red. A terrifying pressure descended from the sky, crushing and shattering all the glass windows of the city's high-rise buildings simultaneously. Piercing alarms blared everywhere.
Streetlights flickered continuously before going out completely. The crowds began screaming and fleeing.
Vehicles crashed into each other, creating chain explosions. Nightingales from all over the headquarters frantically mobilized.
Countless light, ice, and fire abilities roared and surged towards the sky. But before they could even reach the blood-red rift, they were all crushed into fine powder by an invisible pressure. From within the rift, a figure slowly stepped out.
That entity wore an ancient robe, its entire body enveloped in peculiar glows, and behind it hovered countless tiny orbs of light.
Each orb seemed to be the remnant of a world it had once devoured.
It looked down at the city, engulfed in flames and panic, a contemptuous sneer gracing its lips. You foolish ants! It's time to offer your souls and destiny to this venerable one. The harvester's voice echoed through every corner of the world, carrying formidable spiritual might that caused countless mortals to instantly collapse. Even S-tier ability users knelt prostrate on the ground, blood flowing from all 7 orifices.
Captain Ape braced his hands on the ground, his massive body trembling violently as he tried to lift his head to the sky, his eyes filled with despair.
Chen Xia, run! That's not a supernatural user, that's a deity.
Chen Xia didn't run. He pulled a banana-flavored cigarette pack from his pocket, only to find it empty.
He tossed the empty pack and looked up at the flamboyant show-off in the sky. A god, huh? Chen Xia smirked. He'd once chopped off the hand of a self-proclaimed god in his previous world. Who knew he'd encounter another piece of cosmic trash trying to play god in this one? This guy's realm was far inferior to that big hand from before. At most, he was a soul transformation stage cultivator wandering the myriad worlds, specializing in bullying weak, unprotected small worlds.
Chen Xia rolled up his vest sleeves and picked up a crooked iron rod from the ground.
He opened the system panel in his mind, gazing at the karmic luck number, 141. Today, he decided to go all out. His entire 1% of divine sense burst forth with a power that, while seemingly faint, was the purest essence of the peak Tao of time, spanning the entire world. In that instant, this small world seemed to hit a pause button.
The roaring explosions of vehicles ceased. Shards of glass hung suspended in mid-air, and flames froze into bizarre shapes.
A tear in a child's eye stopped mid-fall, and the entire world plunged into absolute silence. Only the harvester in the sky could still move, but his expression had changed drastically. He sensed the law of time, a supreme law that even grand cultivators in the great myriad heavens rarely grasped, yet it existed in this trash world.
Who's playing tricks here? The harvester roared, his long robes billowing. Countless defensive Dharma treasures appeared around him, forming hundreds of layers of brilliant light cages.
The building's security guard, Pay me overtime. A lazy voice echoed right behind him. The harvester spun around in horror. He saw a 16-year-old youth wearing an ill-fitting vest suit, holding an iron rod that couldn't be more ordinary, standing in mid-air, gazing at him. No wings, no special flying abilities. The youth simply stepped on air, as if the laws of all creation bowed before his size 43 shoes. Without hesitation, the harvester unleashed a palm strike carrying planet-destroying power towards Chen Xia. But before the palm chi could even reach him, it automatically dissipated. The 141 points of karmic luck began to take effect. The moment the harvester circulated his cultivation, his meridians suddenly went haywire, and his spirit chi flow became chaotic. A bizarre wind blew from the void, disrupting his entire defensive array. Chen Xia remained expressionless. He swung the iron rod. The 3.9 points of power from his 1% divine sense, though seemingly tiny, when imbued with the grand Dao of time and supreme karmic luck, became an unavoidable, unstoppable strike. Crack! The iron rod slammed straight onto the harvester's head. Hundreds of layers of defense shattered like soap bubbles. The harvester screamed miserably, all his teeth knocked out. His body plunged headfirst to the ground like a fiery meteorite, creating a 100-meter-deep crater right in the middle of the central plaza. The time stop ended, and the world's clamor returned. Everyone, including Ye Ying and Captain Jing Jing, stared dumbfounded at the gigantic crater that had suddenly appeared, and the youth in the black vest was slowly descending to the edge of the crater. At the bottom of the crater, the dying harvester lay, his laws shattered, his Dabio foundation utterly destroyed. He looked at Chen Xia with eyes filled with extreme terror. You are absolutely not a being of this world. Who are you? Chen Xia casually tossed the iron rod into the crater, dusted his hands, and lazily replied, I already told you. I'm an ally of justice, conveniently working as a security guard. With that, he turned and walked towards Captain Jing Jing, who was still petrified on the spot. In a flash, Chen Xia was standing in front of the gigantic ape. The security mission is over. Chen Xia patted Captain Jing Jing's hairy arm. It's time for me to go too. My 1% divine sense has absorbed enough of this world's rules. There's no point in staying longer. Captain Jing Jing gulped hard, his deep voice trembling. Where do you want to go? Chen Xia looked up at the sky, which was slowly restoring its clear blue color. Back to where I belong. Before I go, I have a parting gift for you. He smiled, his clear eyes flashing with a jade green light. With the power of Chi Luck 141 and the laws of time, Chen Xia stretched out his hand and drew a line in the void. The space before Captain Jing Jing was torn open, revealing a vortex filled with dazzling, colorful light. From within the vortex came melodious music and fantastical images of a 2D anime world. Didn't you always want to lose your V-card? The 2D world is calling you. There are many cute ape girls there, and no one will treat you like a monster anymore. Chen Xia winked. Captain Jing Jing gazed at the spatial vortex, his rough eye socket suddenly reddening, and pea-sized tears rolled down his cheeks. He didn't know how to express his gratitude. He could only kneel on one knee and solemnly bow. Chen Xia, thank you, my brother. Go on. Chen Xia waved his hand. Captain Jing Jing stood up, took a deep breath, and resolutely stepped into the vortex. The space closed, leaving Chen Xia standing alone amidst the ruins. He closed his eyes, feeling this small world frantically offering its purest chi luck to him as a reward for saving the world. His divine sense began to dissipate, turning into specks of light that flew up into the sky, passing through the all heavens and myriad worlds, returning to his true body. The Kangfordian Sword Sea, a tranquil, shallow sea. Chen Xia suddenly opened his eyes wide. He was still sitting cross-legged on a submerged rock at the bottom of the sea, surrounded by schools of small swordfish. Memories from the minor world of abilities surged back like a long dream. He touched the tip of his nose, and the corner of his mouth curved into a familiar smile. This trip truly yielded an immense harvest. The 1% divine sense brought back not only immense chi luck, but also the perfect fusion of various world rules, causing the profound soul chi in his body to instantly skyrocket. A sound of parting water rang out, and the old fisherman appeared on the sea surface, his feet treading on a giant swordfish, still holding a bronze-green fishing rod in his hand. He looked at Chen Xia in surprise, his bushy eyebrows furrowed tightly. Brat, you only submerged your spiritual consciousness for an incense stick's worth of time. Why are you awake already? Could it be that the natives killed you so quickly? Chen Xia stood up, stretching lazily and refreshingly. The water bubbles around him automatically parted. An incense stick's time in the great all heavens is an entire lifetime in a minor world. He smiled at the old fisherman. I wasn't beaten to death. I just casually saved a world, helped a chimpanzee graduate from virginity, and then took a nap and came back. The old fisherman was about to scold him for spouting nonsense, But immediately, he noticed the earth-shattering changes in Chen Xia's body.
His peak nascent soul cultivation, which had been suppressed, now erupted like a volcano. Spiritual energy within 100,000 miles of the Kangtian Sword Sea frantically gathered towards Chen Xia, forming a massive vortex at the bottom of the sea.
His seven-colored golden core in his dantian completely shattered. A tiny nascent soul, in Chen Xia's likeness, appeared, sitting cross-legged with its eyes tightly closed, holding an iron staff in its hand. The aura of the great Tao of time, extreme power, and supreme destiny intertwined, transforming that nascent soul into an existence beyond the comprehension of ordinary cultivators. Soul transformation stage. Extreme soul transformation stage.
The old fisherman gasped in a cold breath, his hand holding the fishing rod trembling.
You actually directly bypass several cultivation barriers, and your Dapple foundation is frighteningly solid. Let alone the grand entrance selection, even if it's competing for the position of the sect master's true disciple, you'd be more than capable.
Chen Xia reined in his aura, and the surrounding seawater returned to stillness. He walked onto the surface of the water, standing shoulder to shoulder with the old fisherman.
I already told you, I just need to live long enough, and I'll naturally be invincible. Now I feel like I'm invincible enough to take a stroll. No need to wait another 500 years. I want to enter the deep sea region.
The old fisherman was silent for a long time, his eyes complex as he looked at the lazy youth before him.
Below the saint realm, all are ants. But this kid clearly hasn't reached the saint realm, yet he gives me the feeling that even a saint wouldn't be able to stop his steps. He let out a sigh and put away his fishing rod. The deep sea region is fraught with dangers, but with your current strength you are qualified to enter. Follow me. Chen Xia followed the old fisherman, stepping past the millions of miles-long boundary of the shallow sea region. The seawater suddenly turned pitch black. Terrifying pressure surged from all directions, and materialized sword intents tore through space. At the bottom of the deep sea, gigantic dark shadows lurked.
Those were eerie creatures, suppressed by the Kangultian Sword Sea for millions of years.
They sensed the aura of strangers, and immediately charged frantically. Countless pitch-black tentacles, carrying great Tao-corroding venom, wrapped around Chen Xia. Chen Xia didn't retreat, nor did he bother to draw his weapon. He simply stepped forward. With every step he took, the great Tao of time created a ripple of stillness. The eerie tentacles, as soon as they touched this ripple, were sealed within the river of time, decaying and vanishing into dust. The eerie creatures that had once caused countless powerhouses to perish now, before Chen Xia, were as weak as paper.
The old fisherman walked ahead, occasionally glancing back, the corners of his mouth twitching uncontrollably.
This kid truly is a monster. The two continued deeper into the center of the Kangtian Sword Sea, where a gigantic sword pierced straight from the seabed all the way to Juxiao, radiating 10,000 zhang of swordlight. At the foot of the gigantic sword, two ethereal figures were sitting, drinking opposite each other. Those were the two great emperors guarding the Kanglotian Sword Sea. They simultaneously paused their wine cups, their gazes piercing through space and time as they looked towards Chen Xia. A surge of formidable might, carrying the power of destruction and creation, crashed down, wanting to test the Tao heart of the newcomer.
Facing the might of the great emperors, the old fisherman immediately bowed respectfully, but Chen Xia merely brushed it off.
He lazily yawned, then stretched out a hand and pushed that imposing pressure away from his body, as if swatting an annoying spiderweb.
He looked at the two great emperors, a slight smile on his face. Sirs, I'm not here to take you as masters, nor to contend for supremacy. I merely wish to borrow a path.
One great emperor spoke up, his voice booming like thunder.
Borrow a path to where?
Chen Xia looked up at the endless void above the colossal sword. To find those I'm meant to meet. I promised a reunion. Even if myriad realms and the boundaries of life and death separate us, I must still go. Huang Qingyue is waiting for me on the 9th mountain. Zhao Shui'er is at the Moon Concealment Immortal sect. I'm strong enough now to protect my lazy life. No one can bother me anymore.
With that, Chen Xia didn't wait for the two great emperors' reply.
He unleashed his full 500 points of strength, 141 points of qi luck, and his great Tao of time, which had already reached great completion. He threw a punch, tearing a colossal hole in the sky of the vast heaven sword sea, revealing a path that led directly to the heart of the immortal realm. Chen Xia waved goodbye to the old fisherman, then unhurriedly stepped into the colossal hole. The two great emperors watched his retreating back, remaining silent for a long time before finally raising their cups together. A man who doesn't contend or strive, yet used the laziest attitude to achieve true invincibility. His Dako is truly beyond our comprehension.
Many years later, in a tranquil corner of an entirely new small world, where verdant mountains stood and water gently flowed, a small wooden house sat by a lake.
In front of the house, a peach blossom tree was in vibrant full bloom.
Huang Qingyue and Zhao Shui'er
were sitting under the peach tree, combing each other's hair. Their cheerful chatter and laughter echoed around. In the distance, a man in shabby green robes was sprawled out on a bamboo swing chair, a blade of dogtail grass in his mouth, his eyes half closed as he basked in the warm afternoon sun. There was no bloodshed, no contention for the great Dao, no schemes from the myriad heavens and 10,000 realms. Chen Xia gently swayed the chair. He was truly invincible. For true invincibility wasn't about defeating countless foes, but having the right to choose an ordinary, peaceful life beside those he loved, until the end of time. A gentle breeze swept by, and peach blossoms drifted down, landing on his robes. Chen Xia smiled, slowly drifting into the deepest, most peaceful sleep he'd had in tens of thousands of years. Undying for 10 millennia, how dare these lowly commoners? Below, only a few eunuchs remained, cupping their fists and tremblingly reporting to His Majesty. They've already broken into the Great Hall, but reinforcements are coming soon. The Emperor's eyes burned with fury. He slammed his fist onto the throne and furiously roared, "These lowly commoners! I shall go invite the Immortal to annihilate them!" He angrily stood up, and, under the eunuchs' expectant gazes, walked towards his palace in the back. He remembered his imperial father once saying that 100 meters deep was where the Immortal was in secluded cultivation. Now he would go invite the Immortal to annihilate these lowly commoners. The Emperor furiously rushed to the front of his palace and shouted loudly towards the Immortal's palace, "Come out quickly and help me annihilate these lowly commoners! Immortal, come out quickly!" There was not the slightest response. The Emperor's face gradually grew anxious. He continuously pounded on the ground, angrily yelling, "Come out quickly, Immortal! Come out quickly!" In the end, the Immortal still didn't give a single response. The peasant soldiers surrounding the palace had arrived and captured the Dasong Emperor alive. From then on, the Dasong dynasty was considered annihilated, and a new dynasty, Dao Xia, rose to power. The first thing the Dao Xia Emperor did upon taking office was to kowtow before a sculpted statue of Chen Xia. The existence of immortals was deeply etched into everyone's hearts. As long as they were former citizens of Dasong, they all believed in immortals. Therefore, the first thing the current Dao Xia Emperor did upon taking office was to kowtow and worship the Immortal. Chen Xia, 100 meters deep, naturally took all these events into his sight. But he didn't concern himself with this kind of human calamity. The change of dynasties was inevitable. Recalling a few hundred years ago, he and Song Tian once said that no dynasty lasts forever. Even if he wasn't the imperial preceptor of Dasong, he would still be the imperial preceptor of Datang, Dazun, or Dali. And time had proven it all. He was a bystander in the flow of time. The only thing he needed to do was remain silent. Chapter 37. 100,000-year Nascent Soul Heavenly Tribulation. If 500 years marked a cycle, Chen Xia was witnessing this very cycle. His divine sense would occasionally spread out, merging with heaven and earth, perceiving the voices of all living beings. According to what Qi Refiner said, this was a sign of becoming a god. He was about to become a part of this heavenly Dako, even replacing it, to become the sole god of this heaven and earth. This process still required a bit more time for accumulation. Chen Xia was not impatient with waiting. His great turtle breathing technique had already been cultivated to perfection, but there were no hints for the next stage of the cultivation technique. Chen Xia estimated that he would surely have to wait until he reached Nascent Soul for this great turtle breathing technique to upgrade based on destiny. Otherwise, it was due to insufficient destiny, and he needed to add more destiny. Currently, his strength had reached 350, destiny 40, and magic power 0, the perfect template of a brave but foolish warrior. Actually, Chen Xia also felt there was no need to add magic power. Later, he could just acquire magic resistance points. Adding strength was to hit people harder, and destiny was for critical hits to hit people even harder. These two complement each other, so they can mutually support one another. However, Chen Xia was also kinda curious about magic power, planning that when he had more points later, just for fun, he'd allocate 1 point to magic power to see what happens. Furthermore, Chen Xia's current connection with this small piece of heaven and earth was growing deeper, sometimes even feeling like he was heaven and earth. For this reason, a tremor would reverberate in his mind, the mysterious sound of heaven and earth. It had occasionally resonated for the past 10 years, a series of frantic tremors. Chen Xia felt it was like a warning. But what exactly was it warning about? Volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tsunamis. While these disasters possessed devastating power against ordinary people, they had no impact whatsoever on heaven and earth. In fact, heaven and earth themselves caused these disasters. Then what else could it be? Chen Xia quickly realized it was the cultivators from beyond, the great hand, that destroyed the city back then, which was why heaven and earth were warning him, because this thing didn't belong to heaven and earth, and would even erode the great Tao of heaven and earth. Chen Xia's mind had also been strained for the past 10 years. To resist this great hand, he had accelerated writing his Dalio scripture,
wanting to complete it before the Great Hand descended. If he could use this netherworld ultimate Dao scripture to lure the Great Hand into a one-on-one fight and steal 3/10 of its power, Chen Xia was confident he would grasp victory. The key takeaway is one word. I don't just want to torment you right in front of your face, I'll even beat you within an inch of your life. So Chen Xia is super busy right now, refining profound soul ki during the day, and writing his Dao scripture at night. The last time the Great Hand appeared was about 400 years ago, and if calculated by the 500-year cycle, Chen Xia would have to face the pressure of the Great Hand in another 100 years. Chen Xia had already thought it through. By then, he'd have 3 choices: fight or run. Actually, no need to think too hard, but using permutations and combinations, there were 2 more ways. Can't win the fight, then run. Can't escape, then fight. So many choices, huh? Chen Xia chuckled mockingly, having stepped up his cultivation, striving to punch the Great Hand to death in 100 years. But life is always full of surprises, and never goes exactly as planned. Today, Huangcheng suddenly went dark, even darker than night. Because at night, there's still moonlight. The people rushed out, vying to look up at the sky, feeling like the shadow covering the sky resembled a finger, and this finger was continuously descending. Just tens of miles away, the swirling Q currents had already whipped up a fierce gale in the city. The common folk were utterly terrified. After receiving the news, the noble officials immediately prepared their carriages. They wanted to flee, but the entire hand was hundreds of miles wide. Even if your carriage didn't rest, it could only travel 50 miles a day. How could you possibly escape in a single day? As for the people remaining in the imperial capital, they began to wait for death. But they weren't just idly waiting. Some people began frantically kowtowing to Chen Xia's statue, hoping the Immortal could save the world. Others, having lost all hope, were annoyed by seeing others kowtowing. A mighty kick sent Chen Xia's statue toppling. You're just pointing at the statue, uselessly trembling in anger. No one can save us. Stop dreaming about immortals. That's just a rumor from hundreds of years ago. Just wait to die, wait to die. The kowtowing person picked up the statue, sighed. You can curse all you want, but there's no need to kick the Immortal's head. The 2 who kicked the statue also let out a long sigh. How could they not hope for an Immortal to save the world? But there wasn't one. The giant hand in the sky was getting closer and closer. Everyone could already see the clear lines between its fingers. Between the gaps of the fingers there were also streaks of lightning like tiny snakes slithering around. Everyone already knows. Immortals won't save the world, immortals want to exterminate it. In the very center of the imperial city, the current emperor tremblingly walked to the center of his imperial chambers, bowing deeply and kowtowing, trying to suppress his trembling voice, and respectfully said, "Emperor of Dexia, respectfully requests the Immortal to emerge." He kowtowed forcefully, and the sound of his kowtows echoed all around. After the echoes of the kowtows faded, complete silence fell all around. There was no more sound. The Dexia Emperor's body was trembling. He thought of what the previous emperor had told him, thought of the legends passed down through the ages, thought of how he himself had to worship the Immortal statue every year. He was unwilling to accept it, so he kowtowed forcefully again, pleading for the Immortal to save the world. This time, even the wind fell silent. The corner of the Dexia Emperor's mouth twitched as he angrily stood up, pointing at the ground and cursing, "My myriad subjects of Dexia, I have to worship you every year, considering you the most supreme being. Why do you play the cowardly turtle, hiding and refusing to show your face? Could it be that you're afraid of this giant hand in the sky and just ran off to hide early on? What the hell are you to call yourself an immortal? You're just a sly villain playing pathetic tricks." The Dexia Emperor's cursing still didn't quench his anger. He even stomped hard on the ground a few times to show his fury. After his anger dissipated, he slumped to the ground in despair, looking at the giant hand in the sky with a blank expression. Perhaps there was no immortal in this imperial city at all. It was merely a lie of previous emperors used to solidify their dynasty. Why did he believe it? The emperor let out a bitter laugh, covered his face with both hands, and couldn't help but burst into tears. "Let me perish with my empire." A hand suddenly rested on his shoulder, followed by a remark carrying a hint of amusement. "When it comes to cussing people out, you're still way too polite." The emperor looked up in surprise. Tears still lingered at the corners of his eyes. He vaguely stared at the young man before him, his expression immediately turning to shock. Because the young man before him bore many similarities to that immortal statue, though not extremely similar. At least a 50% resemblance, mainly in temperament. A nonchalant aura, and moreover, to be so nonchalant, even in the current situation. Xianren. Now, don't cry. Go wait behind me and watch my show." Chen Xia was coaxing him like a child, and considering his age, the current emperor before him was indeed a child. The emperor blushed, quickly stood up, cupped his hands, and bowed to Chen Xia, respectfully saying, "Greetings, Immortal." Chen Xia's lips curled into a smile. "Then you'd better look closely. You won't get to see it again." The emperor looked up, only catching a glimpse before Chen Xia's figure had already appeared in the sky. He took a mighty step forward, and the entire sky condensed into dark clouds, covering hundreds of miles, even enveloping this giant hand. Fiery red lightning bolts danced in the dark clouds. From time to time, lightning dragons, dense as a forest, poked their heads out.
Looking down, a terrifying primeval aura emanated from within. A pair of pale blue eyes peered out from the dark clouds, like the gaze of eternity, searching for a tribulation transcender.
This was a 100,000-year emperor-level lightning tribulation.
Chapter 38. Just 0.01 more power, and I'll sever this giant hand. In the immortal realm, countless divine senses almost instantly gazed towards this tiny world, converging to observe the heavenly Dao. These divine senses all belonged to old acquaintances who had known each other for tens of thousands of years, and instantly exchanged thoughts with each other, asking with utter astonishment, a 100,000-year nascent soul lightning tribulation? Could such a figure possibly appear in this tiny world? He wouldn't believe it even if you beat him to death. That in this tiny world, lacking spiritual xianxia and fortuitous encounters, a peerless prodigy could appear to transcend a 100,000-year nascent soul lightning tribulation. While they were exchanging divine senses, a great expert frowned and asked, "What is this giant hand? How could a heaven and earth dharma idol brazenly arrive in my immortal realm?" A saint's divine sense leisurely replied, "It's merely borrowing a living being's body. Judging by this, he must have already achieved sainthood. Coming to this tiny world that belongs to the immortal realm to harvest some chi luck, his calculations were quite shrewd. Who'd have thought he'd run into a tough nut now? A 100,000-year nascent soul lightning tribulation, huh? My. If this person only passes, the path to emperor will be wide open. As long as he doesn't die prematurely, shedding his mortal shell and becoming an emperor is inevitable." While the great experts exchanged divine senses, they cast their gaze to appraise the tribulation transcender, and soon, someone frowned. "What's going on? This person doesn't have the blessing of this world's chi luck?" The other great experts were slightly stunned. Even after living for tens of thousands of years, they had never heard of such a thing. To be able to transcend a 100,000-year nascent soul lightning tribulation, yet still lack the blessing of the world's chi luck. Isn't this like a eunuch visiting a brothel? Utterly ridiculous. The comparison might be a bit crude, but that's the gist of it. The great experts, unable to figure it out, simply stopped pondering, and directly used a great divine ability to reverse deduce his past and present lives. Chen Xia's karma and fortuitous encounters? The answer was none. A blank slate. Several great experts sighed, feeling that this was obvious. After all, he was a person without chi luck. The divine senses transformed into illusory figures, standing on the heavenly Dao, looking at each other. Their expressions seemed to hold unspoken words, but no one spoke first. The great experts, with their varied expressions, each harbored their own calculations in their hearts. Finally, a great expert couldn't help but exclaim, "If he is one without destiny, then our Yutian sect will just have to take a small loss and accept him into our sect." Then, a great saint immediately sneered, "One without destiny, yet possesses an emperor's talent. Your Yutian sect is really taking a huge loss, aren't you?" The great expert from Yutian sect remained perfectly calm, answering, "Our Yutian sect doesn't need to rely on the heaven and earth's destiny at all. By rights, I should indeed bear this loss." "Hey, what you're saying isn't right." An old sage shook his head and replied, "Although our Dinshan relies on the heaven and earth's destiny, we can also expend a large amount of resources to help this person reconstruct his true body and forge a supreme immortal body, thus complementing his emperor's talent." The great expert from Yutian sect looked at the old man solemnly, saying in a deep voice, "You old geezer, you've gone mad. You even dare to utter the words, 'Forge a supreme immortal body.' What will you use to forge it? Will you use that ancient old thing you've hidden for tens of thousands of years in your Dinshan's bronze coffin?" "It might not be impossible," the old man lightly said, as if it were nothing. The atmosphere among the great experts became stifled, growing a bit heavy. "Oh my, take it easy, gentlemen. Let's see if this person can even pass through the 100,000-year lightning tribulation first. What if he gets struck down and killed by the lightning tribulation? What are you even arguing about then?" That's actually quite true. The great experts then directed their spiritual senses downwards, becoming like the wind and rain between heaven and earth, not affecting anything, just silently observing. They watched as dark clouds covered the sky, and lightning tribulations arose on all sides. They watched the green-robed figure standing steadily in the sky, directly facing the immense pressure of the giant hand. Chen Xia calmly gazed at the giant hand pressing down, the swirling air making his hair fly and his robes flutter wildly in the wind. His current power level was 399. His cultivation realm was peak golden core, also known as half-step nascent soul. Is that enough? Chen Xia wasn't sure,
but if he didn't try, he'd never know.
Of course, survival was important. But in a person's life, there were always things more important than life itself. Is there anything worth risking your life for?
The corner of Chen Xia's mouth curled into a confident smile, an emerald light flashing in his eyes, as he directly stepped towards the giant hand. He was the god of this heaven and earth, uncaring of human calamities, yet he must destroy heaven-defying talents.
The city's inhabitants, walking on the streets, watched the green-robed figure stepping towards the giant hand in the very center. At first, they were a bit stunned. Then someone, they didn't know who, shouted, "Immortal! That's an immortal!"
The people in the imperial city immediately erupted, kowtowing and bowing towards the lone figure walking in the sky, their faces excited as they shouted for the immortal to save the world. Chen Xia stopped his steps, estimated the distance, then began to roll up his sleeves. He then extended his fist, brought it to his mouth, and blew on it a few times.
This was magical amplification.
He kicked towards the sky, and a loud explosion erupted from the sole of his foot.
A violent gale swept across the heavens, seemingly unable to bear the immense pressure, letting out a trembling, crackling sound. Chen Xia's figure shot out, like a meteor streaking against the flow, trailing a cyan streak across the sky, creating a luminous zone within the giant hand's looming shadow. In an instant, the meteor collided with the giant hand, emitting a deafening roar that echoed through heaven and earth. The giant hand's downward momentum suddenly halted, and it even recoiled hundreds of meters. The city's inhabitants erupted in cheers, shouting loudly, but the giant hand only retreated for a brief moment, before swinging down with even greater force. The immense pressure generated by its descent caused numerous houses in the imperial city to explode.
The people's expressions turned to horror, and they hastily dodged. The giant hand continued its descent.
Chen Xia gritted his teeth, resolutely enduring. Have you ever swatted a mosquito? You clap your hands hard, killing the mosquito, smashing it into a bloody pulp. Right now, Chen Xia was that mosquito. The domineering giant hand swept down, seemingly increasing its power, as if to suppress everything.
Thus, Chen Xia flew back even faster than he arrived, plummeting directly into the center of the imperial city, shattering houses, plunging deep into the earth, and plowing a furrow hundreds of meters deep before he could stabilize himself.
Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Chen Xia pushed aside the rubble beside him, scrambled up, spat out a mouthful of blood, and frowned at the giant hand, recalling a saying he'd once heard. Congratulations on completing the newbie tutorial. Now, try challenging the king. The current situation felt somewhat similar to that saying. Chen Xia wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, standing motionless. He was waiting for his Linglong Qi to reach 999 1,000ths.
Waiting for his trump card to take shape, the power of the imperial city residents. Prayers slowly flowed in, merging into his Linglong Qi.
Almost there.
Chen Xia sighed softly and stepped onto the rubble, standing firm against the descending giant hand.
His divine sense spread out in all directions, transmitting his thoughts to all living beings.
Pray for me. Lend me a hand.
I only need one more person from you, and I can sever this giant hand. The people were stunned for a moment at first, then hastily prostrated themselves and prayed together. Chen Xia's Linglong Qi. 1,000, 1,000.
Brilliant golden light flashed in his eyes, and golden vertical pupils appeared. Behind him, an ancient dragon's roar echoed, as 1,000 Zhang, 5-clawed true dragon coiled majestically between heaven and earth.
Chapter 39. A tailwind of fortune.
Brilliant golden light glowed in Chen Xia's eyes, and a prompt appeared in his mind. The 70,000 true dragon. Behind him now was 1,000 Zhang true dragon, its crest reaching the sky. The enormous hand pressed down domineeringly, accompanied by roaring tribulation lightning, bringing with it a terrifying world-ending sensation. Chen Xia ripped off Bu Qingyi's tattered sleeve, casually tossed it to the ground, spat out a mouthful of blood, then looked towards the enormous hand again. If that enormous hand was the sky, then he was but an insignificant ant in this world, dwarfed by its shadow, utterly beneath notice. But was he really beneath notice? A confident smile tugged at Chen Xia's lips. Even if that enormous hand truly was the sky, he would still ride his imperial dragon and cleave it in two. A violent gust of air swept down, exploding houses and flattening the surface of the water. Within 100 miles, rivers surged, and birds plummeted to the ground. Chen Xia took his first step, incredibly steady amidst the chaotic current.
The 1,000 Zhang true dragon, roaring majestically behind him, had transformed into his grand phenomenon, dominating the highest reaches of the sky. The divine senses of several great experts couldn't comprehend it, causing them to frown in unison, their tones filled with surprise. What's happening? Even an ancient species has been summoned? What exactly is this brat's background? Is he the reincarnation of some great emperor? Doesn't look like it, but it's too strange. We've never heard of any cultivator capable of summoning an ancient true dragon. Even in the immortal realm, there aren't many true dragons, and those that exist reside in the dragon abyss, nurtured by the dragon ancestors. Even great experts can't see through them. Then there's no point thinking about it. After all, there are so many things happening in the myriad worlds. If they could understand everything, they wouldn't still be mere saints.
Currently, the most intense focus was on the battle between Chen Xia and the enormous hand. He used his grand phenomenon of the Thousand Zhang True Dragon's golden art to resist the enormous hand. Their collision warped and shattered space, revealing the abyssal black void within. The enormous hand couldn't press down, and the true dragon couldn't lift its head. The two sides were locked in a stalemate. Chen Xia gritted his teeth, both hands firmly gripping the dragon's head, resolutely resisting the pressure of the enormous hand. His entire body's qi and blood surged, pouring out all his strength. Even the corners of his mouth began to seep blood. Thus, he offered a rather ill-conceived suggestion. How about we both take a step back? You go first, and come back in 200 years. By then, I'll definitely give you a proper reception. This suggestion was indeed ill-conceived, to the point that the enormous hand didn't respond at all. Instead, it instantly pressed down with even greater force. This surge in power caused a tremor that cracked the ground for dozens of miles around, spreading out in spiderweb-like fissures. Chen Xia, bearing the brunt of it, naturally became even more disheveled. He coughed out a large mouthful of blood, a hint of anger now flashing in his eyes as he stared at the enormous hand before him. If you don't agree, fine. But why suddenly increase your power? Do you really think I'm some soft persimmon to be squeezed? Chen Xia gritted his teeth, brilliant golden light erupting from his pupils. The golden radiance quickly spread, enveloping his body. And, in an instant, he transformed into a resplendent golden divine being. Riding the Thousand Zhang Imperial Dragon, he charged towards the enormous hand, fighting desperately. The enormous hand began to gush blood, large and small wounds appearing on it. The terrifying pressure it exerted diminished as its qi and blood flowed away, as if losing its life force. With one hand, Chen Xia tore off the edge of the enormous hand's fingernail, directly pulling out a 1,000-meter-long, deep gash of flesh and blood. He even mumbled, "I'll make your finger a thorn in your side." The qi and blood splattered across the sky, hadn't even reached the ground, before the terrifying aura of the battle between the two sides vaporized it, vanishing between heaven and earth. The enormous hand also seemed enraged, and no longer pressed down. Instead, it directly chose to close its two hands, intending to utterly crush Chen Xia within its grasp. Chen Xia also refused to yield, maniacally charging towards the enormous hand, intent on staining the blue sky red with its qi and blood. And from high up in the sky, a cold and arrogant voice echoed, "An insignificant ant-like creature dares to cause trouble within my palm. I shall use my palm as the great Dao, obliterate your divine soul, and make your physical body vanish into the heavens and earth, never to enter reincarnation." The mighty cultivators in the sky had their expressions shaken, immediately discussing the existence of a Quasi-Emperor. A Quasi-Emperor from another realm. Why has he come to this small world to harvest chi luck? Could it be that he intends to farm this small world? To harvest it for 10,000 years? Ultimately condensing it into a magic artifact? The mighty cultivators speculated endlessly. But currently, none dared to make a move, holding many reservations. Not to mention the 100,000-year Nascent Soul heavenly tribulation still brewing in the sky, this Quasi-Emperor alone was not someone they could easily provoke. Furthermore, having come to this small world, under the suppression of the current violent will of heaven and earth, their cultivation realms could at most only reach the peak golden core stage. In short, it was of no great use. It was better to calmly observe the situation. Whether this kid deserved to live or die was his own destiny. The strong survive, the weak perish. The struggle for the great Dao between heaven and earth has always been so cruel and ruthless, and no one will reason with you. Chen Xia's fate? If he were to answer himself, he would surely nod, because his luck was always very good. 40 points of chi luck weren't added for nothing. He gritted his teeth and unleashed his true fire. This time, he no longer showed mercy to this giant hand, directly charging towards each finger. The sky shook violently, the great Dao trembled, and the entire small world swayed because of this battle. Chen Xia fought even more ferociously. The 7-colored golden core within his body sparkled. He hadn't broken through to Nascent Soul, yet the golden core in his body lit up with another brilliant light, a golden ray. His golden core now possessed two brilliant colors, bright white and radiant gold. The bright white was the great Dao of time, and the radiant gold was the true dragon anomaly. He fought until his entire body was drenched in blood, forcefully breaking the pinky finger that was tens of miles long, shattering the mountain-sized finger into a rain of blood that spread across the heavens and earth. And the world, drenched by the blood rain, began to diffuse abundant spiritual energy. All things flourished. Chen Xia himself was not lightly injured. His entire body's qi and blood surged, and fresh blood often welled up and spilled from the corners of his mouth. But when one fights with bloodshot eyes, they no longer care about their own injuries. Chen Xia now had only one thought: to completely shatter this giant hand. The giant hand, too, was enraged, beginning to burn its qi and blood power,
wanting to utterly crush this ant-like Chen Xia.
Mountains collapsed across the land. Rivers and seas inverted, and countless blood rains descended upon the mortal world, transforming into abundant spiritual energy that diffused between heaven and earth. The common folk gazed blankly at the sky, watching the shadow above them grow smaller and smaller until it completely vanished, while the blood rain continued to fall relentlessly.
Chen Xia stood alone between heaven and earth, panting ceaselessly, his body covered in fresh blood. His strength was depleted to its limit, and his entire hand was trembling. In the sky, a pair of silent eyes watched the entire primordial slaughter, finally began to stir, gazing intently at Chen Xia.
There were no other movements, but the sky-filling thunderclouds began to roar.
The mountain-sized heavenly lightning gleamed, bearing a destructive will, poised to strike.
Chen Xia gasped, his gaze helplessly fixed on the dark clouds,
as he made a final decision. He added the points he had just earned to his Qi luck. Qi luck value 41. He was ready to begin. With his life on the line, Chen Xia stood tall, facing the lightning-filled sky. A serene expression on his face, he offered a final smile, as if a favorable wind would blow at his back. Chapter 40. The great myriad heavens lightning unfurled across the mortal realm, as giant primordial eyes silently gazed down, observing all, until the lightning annihilated the cultivator undergoing tribulation. That mountain-sized ancient lightning receded into the dark clouds. The lightning once again manifested in a hidden, dormant form. The dark clouds that had enveloped the entire small world then dissipated. The 100,000-year nascent soul tribulation lightning vanished, retreating to the heart of the Lei Qi Kang Tian. The divine senses of the great powers swiftly swept towards the previous location, their hearts sinking with a sense of loss. The figure transcending tribulation was nowhere to be seen. Had they perhaps vanished along with the lightning tribulation? The great powers sighed again. What a pity for a great emperor seed. But alas, it is merely a pity.
Great emperors throughout the myriad realms were few and far between. A great emperor seed that hadn't matured in time could only earn a mournful sigh of regret.
The divine senses of the great powers retreated back to the immortal realm, dispersing in all directions, no longer lingering, and caring even less for this small world. And the transformation of this small world truly began the moment this rain of blood fell. Bai Kao revived, sprouting strange new forms. Some people accidentally ate them, gaining bizarre divine abilities, like being able to photosynthesize, for instance. And then there were also peak Jianghu experts, suddenly achieved enlightenment, and stepped onto the immortal Dao. Wild beasts in the mountains began to mutate. Some even spoke human language. Even more amusingly, a certain He Xiangjing kept sneaking into a nearby temple to steal monk robes. A true uniform fetishist. The immortal path thus opened up across this entire small world. Thus, everyone came to know one thing. Spiritual qi had recovered within a vast body of water. The water's surface was as calm as a mirror, resembling the very edge of time. Chen Xia lay on the water's surface, then dazedly sat up. Seeing his perfectly unblemished self, he became even more bewildered. "You're awake?" A tranquil query, spoken by an old fisherman, slowly drifted into Chen Xia's ears. "You are?" Chen Xia asked, a little confused. The old fisherman, holding a bronze fishing rod, his ancient face broke into a smile. "It was I who fished you out from the river of time. Did I become a river drifter?" Chen Xia was slightly surprised. The old fisherman's thick eyebrows furrowed slightly as he chuckled. "You can't put it like that. You could say you've ascended, but not to the immortal realm. Rather, you've ascended to the great myriad heavens." Chen Xia's expression grew even more bewildered. The old fisherman immediately explained. "Among the myriad heavens and worlds, the place you were in before was a minor heaven. The immortal realm is a major dimension. And this place is an even higher level, called the grand myriad heavens." "Is there any difference?" Chen Xia asked, frowning. The old fisherman shook his head. "No difference. The strong eat, the weak eat shit. Nothing's different." Crude words. Yet the meaning was profound indeed. Chen Xia asked again. "Why did you fish me out?" The old fisherman chuckled softly, his thick, worm-like eyebrows twitching upwards as he extended a finger. "Because you are the one." Chen Xia froze, thinking of ominous possibilities, and quickly shook his head. "I'm not the one, nor am I. No one. You're the unique one." The old fisherman paid no mind to Chen Xia's words, continuing, "You are the unique one in this minor heaven. To put it simply, you're the protagonist." All right. Chen Xia nodded repeatedly, still full of questions. "But you still haven't said why you fished me out." The old fisherman chuckled. "Just taking in a disciple." "You can consider it me completing a task. That's why I had to fish you, the unique one, out to be my disciple." "Why me?" Chen Xia frowned, asking for the third time. The old man asked back, "Why not you?" The old man chuckled in response, then offered an explanation. "Your talent has reached the emperor level, and you're the unique one of a minor heaven, with the potential to transcend. Plus, There's the existence of an aberrant true dragon. Naturally, I would choose you.
Chen Xia crossed his arms, asking another question. Who are you? The old fisherman chuckled faintly, looking at him as he asked.
You cultivate the grand Tao of time? Yet you don't know who I am?
Chen Xia frowned.
I'm guessing you're the time ancestor?
The old fisherman shook his head.
No, but I once was the time ancestor. So, I guess you can't guess who I am now.
Chen Xia gave up. The old fisherman chuckled.
Who I am isn't important. Anyway, after taking you in as a disciple, you probably won't see me around.
Haha. Chen Xia didn't respond to that, instead asking,
which sect do we belong to?
The old fisherman's deep eyes looked at him, chuckling faintly.
Kang Tian Jian Hai, one of the top 3 in the grand myriad heavens. If I choose not to join, can you drop me back where you fished me out?
Chen Xia asked, tentatively. The old fisherman shook his head directly. He replied domineeringly.
This old man never returns empty-handed.
Chen Xia was stunned.
This old geezer is quite something.
The old fisherman chuckled faintly.
In the grand myriad heavens, everything exists. All sorts of mixed power systems. Cultivation systems, sci-tech systems, supernatural ability systems. You don't need to worry about it. Just remember this secret art, and it can guarantee your safety.
Chen Xia sat up straight, listening attentively, as the old fisherman slowly began to recite.
Don't dress too warmly, eat moderately, live simply, travel humbly, work without exhaustion, don't be too complacent, don't revel too much, don't rage excessively, don't chase fame, don't crave profit, can't win, run.
Chen Xia was stunned at first, then nodded repeatedly. Good. Truly like hearing the words of a sage.
As if listening to the words of a sage, the old fisherman also burst out laughing, nodding his head. Kid, you're quite interesting, aren't you? Get up. Prepare to come with me to the Kangultian Sword Sea.
Chen Xia stood up, waiting for the old fisherman to lead the way. But the old man didn't move. He placed his fishing rod by his side, looked at the pond, and chuckled. The sea is right under your feet.
This pond? Chen Xia asked, perplexed.
No, the old fisherman said, shaking his head with a smile.
It's the sea. The entire small pond within Chen Xia's sight gradually expanded. His ears twitched slightly, as if he heard the roaring of ocean waves. Amidst those subtle sounds, there was the hum of swords. The hum of swords came from the sky. He raised his head in astonishment, and between the vast sky and the boundless sea, a sword floated, spanning across heaven and earth. This is the Kangultian Sword Sea.
This was Chen Xia's second month entering the Kangultian Sword Sea. With his nascent soul cultivation, he was assigned to the shallow waters.
Responsible for catching fish, he was quite content. It was a good job. Beyond 1,000,000 miles of shallow sea, one would truly enter the vast ocean itself.
Rumor had it that aberrant beings were suppressed deep inside, and anyone below the saint realm shouldn't enter.
Chen Xia absolutely had no intention of venturing inside. He just calmly caught his fish and cultivated his spells on the side. The giant turtle breathing technique had now ascended, becoming a tribulation level spell. It only required 300 years to cultivate to the tribulation transcension stage. Aside from its unappealing name, it had no other flaws.
Furthermore, Chen Xia also discovered a strange phenomenon. Spiritual energy frequently and inexplicably seeped into his body. It filled his limbs and bones, enhancing his cultivation.
At first, he was extremely puzzled. Later, when he comprehended this spiritual energy, he discovered its origin. Spiritual energy transmitted from a minor grotto heaven. In that minor grotto heaven, he had become a god, and severed a mighty hand. Now that the spiritual energy had recovered, it was the time for its feedback. This was as if a world was urging Chen Xia to cultivate. The stronger Chen Xia became, the stronger this world became, and vice versa. Chen Xia's eyes gleamed. He had invented a perpetual motion machine. Chapter 41. Plunging into 10,000 worlds.
Cultivation in the Kangultian Sword Sea was incredibly dull. Fortunately, Chen Xia had long been accustomed to boredom. Besides, he also had a colleague he could chat with.
His colleague was an octopus, whose hobby was playing a bamboo flute while standing on 6 legs. Truly bizarre. Chen Xia and the octopus simply continued to catch fish within a 100-mile radius of the shallow waters.
The process of catching fish was very normal, but the fish they caught were anything but.
It was said that these were fish from the Sword Sea, containing internal sword Q that could provide insights to sword cultivators. Chen Xia didn't care much for sword intent. All he knew was that once caught, he'd eat them. He couldn't sense any sword Qi. The meat, however, was incredibly fresh and delicious.
Usually, during these moments, his octopus colleague would look at him with a strange gaze, its mouth slightly agape, as if wanting to say something, but then glumly closing it.
Chen Xia keenly observed, then offered the piece of fish in his hand, asking, "Want to try some?" He was certainly a polite one. Octopus tugged at his robe, shaking his head slightly. No need. These aren't meant for me. Chen Xia didn't press further, looking at Octopus, then asked a question that had been bothering him. What's the point of us catching fish here? Octopus adjusted the flute at his waist, his gaze deep as he replied, to forge swords. Chen Xia was completely bewildered, asking, what's that supposed to mean? In the distant sea, a clamshell bank surfaced, stretching for about 1,000 zang. Just swimming near it would stir up fierce waves. Octopus moved his 6 legs in unison, drew the flute from his waist, and headed towards the colossal 1,000 zhang shark, replying simultaneously, this place is the Sword Sea. Innumerable sword intents surged within the Sword Sea. The seawater itself was sword qui. Fish gravitate towards the swords, and the larger the fish, the stronger the pressure, and the denser the sword intent. Without looking back, he fully drew out his flute and advanced towards the shark. Chen Xia anxiously urged, you're not seriously going to go serenade a shark right now, are you? Octopus confidently retorted, this isn't an instrument, it's my sword. With a pull of the flute, a massive wave split horizontally before him. No longer obstructed, he stepped onto the Sword Sea and advanced. As he prepared to wield his sword and cleave the 1,000 zang shark, Octopus finally let out a mighty roar. Today I shall either become the sword, or I shall be merely human. 3 breaths later, Octopus successfully found his grave in the shark's belly. The ocean surface grew still, water sparkling with ripples. Chen Xia watched the 1,000 zang shark carry Octopus away. He couldn't help but let out a sigh of lament for the companion he had lived with for many days. He's genuinely so brave. I'm literally crying myself to death. Octopus's sudden disappearance also made Chen Xia realize one crucial thing. Don't leave the shallow water zone. It's best to just stay put. So he remained in these waters for 30 years, immersing himself in the water all day long, occasionally eating some small fish and shrimp, never meeting another soul. This life, besides being utterly bland, was just plain boring. Chen Xia persevered, even gradually adapting to it, until the 1st century passed. The old fisherman finally arrived, looking at Chen Xia in surprise, furrowing his brow as he asked, you haven't moved an inch from your spot? Without waiting for Chen Xia's reply, it's been a whole century. Didn't you think to go up on your own? The old fisherman pointed at the colossal sword suspended horizontally in the sky, then asked. Without waiting for Chen Xia's answer, the old fisherman raised an eyebrow, his tone slightly impatient. You have to go up there for the grand entrance selection, don't you? I'm the one who brought you in. If you don't even get a ranking, how am I supposed to face the sect leader and demand what's owed to me? Without waiting for Chen Xia's reply, the old fisherman became increasingly bewildered. His figure flickered, drawing closer to Chen Xia, and he asked, are you a broken record? Chen Xia sighed, covering half his face with his hand, shaking his head as he said, cultivation isn't just about constant hacking and slashing. I feel I should be given a few more myriad years. To prepare for a few more myriad years. The old fisherman frowned. Are you preparing to send me to my grave? The old man spoke angrily, then asked, Chen Xia, are there truly so many existences in the myriad heavens and worlds? If you don't fight or contend, how will you reach the peak? How will you rise? Chen Xia replied sincerely, as long as I live longer than all of you, I can be invincible. The old fisherman curled his lips, speechless, and said, then don't bother cultivating these techniques anymore. Go learn the turtle retreat technique. That's what can truly endure. Chen Xia didn't agree with this point. After all, the giant turtle breath technique he cultivated was a life-prolonging method. The old fisherman helplessly looked at him, pondered for a moment, and said, 500 years from now, for the grand entrance selection, you absolutely must go. Otherwise, you'll be banished to the deep waters of the Sword Sea. All right. Chen Xia immediately nodded, a serious expression on his face. I've decided to participate in the grand entrance selection 500 years from now. Attitudes aren't absolute. They can all change. The old fisherman nodded in satisfaction, his gaze sweeping over Chen Xia, then asked, to what extent has your sword intent been condensed? My Xianxia Sword Sea is a sword cultivation sect, where sword cultivators hold the dominant position. You'd best still cultivate the sword. No need. Chen Xia shook his head, looking at the old fisherman, and said sincerely, just let me live for a few more tens of thousands of years, and that'll be enough. The 2 old fishermen sighed helplessly, saying, you don't understand. No supreme great emperor throughout history has ever ascended by simply living long. They all fought their way up, step by step. Without talent, and without contending, one can never reach the peak in their entire life. Chen Xia looked at the old fisherman with a serious expression. His hand, which had been covering his face, moved to rub the tip of his nose. He paused for a moment, then replied, perhaps they simply haven't lived long enough. This kid, the old fisherman shook his head, no longer wanting to advise him. Just let Chen Xia be. He stretched out his hand and pulled, and the heavens and earth spun. Chen Xia lowered his head. Beneath his feet was a gigantic sword blade, and he was now atop Kangtian Peak. This time, the participants of the grand entrance selection included many ancient species, even mythical ones, and among them were 2 great emperor seeds. If you want to achieve a good rank, you must diligently cultivate, the old fisherman replied. No, Chen Xia shook his head. I don't want to. It's the old fisherman who wants a good rank. The two of them stared blankly at each other. The old fisherman said in an unfriendly tone, I'll give you a chance to rephrase that. Chen Xia nodded. I really want to. This kind of attitude can change at any time. That's more like it. The old fisherman nodded, clasped his hands behind his back, and continued. And the best way to cultivate is to descend into the myriad realms. Time in the myriad heavens and worlds is not uniform. The smaller the realm, the faster time passes. Time in our great heavens passes at only 80% the rate of the immortal realm. In some small realms, it can even be a ratio of 1 to 100. 1 day in the great heavens, 100 days in a small realm. Chen Xia's eyes lit up, as if a new world had opened up before him. There's such a good thing? The old fisherman saw his joy, then shook his head, pouring a bucket of cold water on it. Although that's the case, almost no one wants to descend into small realms, because their karmic luck and opportunities are too limited, having long since been monopolized by the natives. For an outsider like you to go there, not only will your strength be suppressed, but you also risk being killed by the natives. This is not uncommon, and the risks far outweigh the rewards. So, I advise you to go to a medium-level world. At least the opportunities there are ample. No, I want to go to a small-level world. Chen Xia shook his head, his eyes resolute. Opportunities don't matter. I mainly enjoy challenging risks. The fishing old man was stunned for a moment. After a long while he shook his head and said, Damn you, you truly are an oddball. Chapter 42. Currently attending KFC's luxurious lunch. Having accumulated points over 100 years, Chen Xia decided to invest all of them into his Qi luck, primarily for a stroke of good fortune. Qi luck value, 141. Received the title, Son of the Celestial Pivot. Son of the Celestial Pivot, you are a true son of heaven. Your Qi luck has reached a mystical level, normally not obvious, but the grander the situation, the better your luck will be. This makes it quite suitable for gambling with your life. Chen Xia nodded, feeling he had gained another trump card, putting him much more at ease. His cultivation had already reached the peak Nascent Soul stage. Thanks to the nourishment from the ancient tortoise, the breathing technique, and the spiritual key of the small grotto heaven, his cultivation speed was truly monstrous. He was about to reach the cultivation level of an elder in the immortal realm. Regarding the division of realms, the fishing old man couldn't elaborate clearly, only saying it was above saint and below saint. Above saint meant stepping onto the path of an emperor and achieving transcendence. Below saint, most were merely ants, nothing worth mentioning. In the great myriad heavens, just within the azure heaven sword sea alone, there were 2 great emperor-level figures stationed. One was stationed at the highest point of the azure heaven, while the other resided in the deepest part of the sword sea. Chen Xia, meanwhile, was arranged to live in the disciple quarters on the sword's blade, fostered as a reserve disciple. In the disciple quarters, there were a total of 100 reserve disciples, all with bizarre appearances. Simply an encyclopedia of anomalous creatures. Only Chen Xia had the most unassuming and unflashy appearance. No forest grew on his head, nor did a tail sprout from his back. This led to Chen Xia being the most looked down upon, compounded by his lazy personality, with his most prominent trait being resignation. Therefore, these strangely shaped reserve disciples didn't want to associate with Chen Xia. Even if they heard Chen Xia was the modest seed great emperor, they didn't bother to interact much. There was never a shortage of seed great emperors. What was truly lacking were actual great emperors. Chen Xia was happy to be idle, spending each day cultivating by his door, awaiting the myriad realms descent ritual. He didn't have to wait too long. The fishing old man brought out a Taoist meditation mat, telling Chen Xia to sit on it and simply immerse his divine sense. What's the principle behind this? Chen Xia asked curiously. Do you want a scientific explanation? Or an unscientific one? The fishing old man asked. He used terms from the scientific and technological system. Chen Xia thought for a moment, then replied, Scientific, the fishing old man replied. According to the thesis of the Mecha Great Saint from the scientific and technological system, human divine sense can be divided into countless parts, and each part can independently enter a world. The method of transmigration is related to the temporal system. The nuclear-powered Immortal once explained that time is relative. Alright, I get it. Before the old fisherman could finish, Chen Xia quickly cut in. The old fisherman glanced at him, then asked, Want to hear the unscientific explanation? Chen Xia shook his head. No need. This setting was already unscientific the moment it appeared, especially when the Merrick Great Sage and nuclear-powered Immortal showed up. That just took the absurdity to a whole new level. The old fisherman nodded. Then prepare to sync your divine sense. Split off 1% of your divine sense and you'll naturally find it. That small world's time flow is accelerated by 100 times. Okay. Chen Xia nodded, focused his mind, and began to control his divine sense to split it. He precisely split off 1%. And it was this fragment that began to traverse the myriad worlds. If each of the myriad worlds was a point of light, then what Chen Xia sought was the tiny speck within them. His divine sense swept through quickly, skimming the information of the myriad worlds, searching rapidly. He didn't know how much time had passed, but finally, he spotted a tiny, shimmering orb of light, isolated in a corner. Chen Xia's spiritual thought leaped, diving straight into that tiny orb of light. Within his spiritual thought, a torrent of memories surged. In 301 CE, a meteorite crash brought forth abilities. Humanity gained abilities, becoming immensely powerful, muscular, breathing fire, creating ice. In stark contrast to their great power, their temperaments also turned violent, and they began to violate rules and laws. In 310 CE, mutants rioted, the world collapsed. In the first decade of the new century, the new government established the Nightingale Organization, specializing in hunting down wanted mutants. Chen Xia was a junior Nightingale, having just passed his tests at 16. At this moment, he was on the street, facing a panicked, fleeing crowd. "Run! The mutants are here! Get out of the way! Run!" A cacophony of panicked screams echoed as the terrified crowd fled in utter disorder. No one paid attention to the stampedes, for behind them was an even more terrifying existence. The furious flames of the mutant erupted occasionally, blowing up buildings and shattering glass. Vehicles were rapidly claiming the lives of the people. Chen Xia frowned. An insistent thought echoed within him, urging him to protect the people. After a moment's thought, he surmised this thought must be the will of heaven and earth. As an outsider transported into this small world, given an identity by the heavenly Dafio, he immediately had to perform actions befitting this status, lest he be rejected by the will of heaven and earth. Chen Xia's identity was a nightingale of the new government, so naturally, he had to protect the people. There were no other nightingales around. Chen Xia was forced to act. All his body's stats were just 1% of his true selves. His strength was 3, cultivation realm chi condensation, 5th stage. That should be enough, right? Chen Xia's footsteps pressed forward, moving against the panicked flow of people, heading towards the blazing inferno, pushing deeper inside. More charred bodies lay scattered on the ground, devoid of life. A figure madly brandished flames, which erupted from their hands with loud explosions, chasing the fleeing crowd. Until they met Chen Xia. "Hello!" Chen Xia offered a polite word, then casually pulled a steel pipe from the nearby junk pile and pointed it at the fireman. The fireman's face twisted into a cruel expression, a sneer playing on his lips as he said, "Welcome to the Bichuan Grill Fest." Chen Xia frowned. This guy seriously messed up. Explosive flames suddenly shot out from in front of him, an intense burning sensation tearing through his flesh. Chen Xia's body crouched. His slightly lowered arm suddenly swung up, and the steel pipe whizzed out, striking the fireman's head with a crack. Blood splattered. Chen Xia lunged forward, appearing before the fireman, snatching the falling steel pipe. Gripping it with both hands, he slammed it down again with all his might. The fireman's head was knocked askew at a bizarre angle, but his body remained unchanged, still standing rigidly in place. His crazed eyes stared at Chen Xia, a sneer once again gracing his lips. Another steel pipe slammed down. The fireman's head twisted a bizarre 180 degrees, yet he was still smiling, even spewing fierce flames that melted the steel pipe. "I'll roast you into a fragrant dish. Crispy on the outside, tender on the inside." The fireman sneered again. "No need for that." A massive fist appeared before the fireman's eyes, followed by a destructive force even greater than the steel pipe, caving in his head. His body, unable to resist, collapsed to the ground. Chen Xia followed up, his fists raining down continuously and rapidly on the fireman's head, completely disregarding the scorching flames. He muttered, "I guess you've never seen real Wing Chun before, huh?" The fireman's head was repeatedly smashed into the ground, sinking deeper and deeper. His sneer gradually turned into agonizing screams as his body thrashed, but his resistance weakened with each passing moment. The flames weakened until they completely extinguished, and he drew his last breath. Chen Xia stood up, lifting his hands, skin peeling from the burns. He put his hands on his hips, gazing at the fireman's fragrant, golden-roasted corpse, judging that he had now truly joined the party. Chen Xia, a level 1 Knight Oriole, who just passed the 2-day assessment, his skill being power enhancement. "So you just punched a C-rank fireman to death like that?" The intelligence officer who came to record the incident looked at 16-year-old Chen Xia with an incredulous expression. Chen Xia nodded casually, looked at the fireman's charred corpse, remained silent for a moment, then explained, "You can't generalize human physiques. I beat him to death while I was extremely pissed off." The intelligence officer sized up Chen Xia with a doubtful gaze, truly unable to comprehend how such formidable power could reside in the scrawny 16-year-old's body. He couldn't help but shake his head. As a Night Oriole, the most important thing is still to control your emotions well. Although anger can make a person stronger, there's also the risk of losing control. You should go to headquarters for a health checkup later, to see if your stats have changed. Alright. Chen Xia nodded, then asked, "So, can I go home now?"
He planned to carefully reorganize his understanding of this world, so he could truly gain a solid footing.
The intelligence officer agreed. "Killing the fireman counts as a considerable merit for you. You can come to headquarters later to claim 2 bottles of enhancement pills."
Chen Xia nodded and didn't linger. Following the memories granted to him by the world's will, he meandered for a while before finding his abode.
Under an overpass, beneath which lay a thin blanket and a tattered mat. Only then did Chen Xia recall his background setting.
He was an orphan who, having suffered unfair treatment since childhood, resolved to become an ally of justice.
Just 2 days ago, he had just managed to join the Night Oriole with barely satisfactory results, becoming the lowest-ranked level 1 member. And the Night Orioles didn't provide room and board. Chen Xia rubbed the tip of his nose and sighed. It'd be better to just work at a screw factory. This was the truth. Chen Xia walked under the overpass, looking around. Actually, it was quite well equipped, arranged like a small home, with tables and chairs, and even a dilapidated rice cooker, though without electricity. Chen Xia sat on the old mat, starting to assess his current situation.
Strength was 3.9. Cultivation realm was the 5th level of Qi refinement. All stats weren't bad. True Dragon Qi was 40%, usable only after fully integrating into the new world. The content in the parentheses was very interesting. Chen Xia could only use it after fully integrating into the world. And the condition for full integration into the world, Chen Xia speculated, must be to play the role the world's will had assigned him well. He just didn't know how long full integration would take. Chen Xia continued to look within his body, his expression suddenly freezing as he discovered something that pleasantly surprised him. Qi luck. 141. His Qi luck hadn't diminished at all, exactly the same as before. Good. Chen Xia was extremely satisfied. This meant he had gained another trump card, and there was something else that pleasantly surprised him.
What's more, the spiritual qi from the former Wu Shi Lesser Cave Heaven was still pouring into his body. Though it was only 1%, this was the spiritual qi of a lesser world.
Furthermore, Chen Xia's current body was still very weak, so he could constantly feel himself gradually growing stronger.
Chen Xia sat there silently, rubbing the tip of his nose, beginning to ponder the world's setting. Ability users were surely considered part of the scientific and technological system in Dazhu Tian, like the Mecha Great Sage, an existence on par with the quantum ancestor. Him, a cultivator, going to fight people from the scientific and technological system. Was that reasonable?
Chen Xia pondered for a moment, feeling that it was actually perfectly reasonable.
Before, as a cultivator, he could deal with martial artists. Why couldn't he fight fire-breathing, lightning-slinging enemies now? Chen Xia stretched and stood up from the mat, leaning against the wall, nonchalantly poking his head out to look around. This was the world of ability users.
Ever since the meteorite fell, 1 out of every 1,000 people born in the new century would possess an ability.
Abilities varied greatly in power and type, but there was a taboo. The stronger an ability user, the more prone they were to going berserk. However, the nightingales created by the new government were different. They would use drugs to enhance and control ability users. These were enhancement drugs. Ability users who took enhancement drugs could become calmer and stronger. However, Chen Xia didn't feel this method was anything good. Where was the logic in becoming stronger just by taking pills? Even if he could add stats, he still had to rely on his own cultivation. Moreover, did enhancement drugs really have no side effects?
Chen Xia remained skeptical. In any case, he definitely wouldn't take them.
Waiting until dusk fell, the darkness receded, and the first light of dawn broke. Chen Xia considered that he had already experienced a day in this world.
He could feel that the connection between himself and this world had deepened slightly.
Today was the Ye Ying Assembly Day. Chen Xia had to go to the new government headquarters in his district. To match his status, Chen Xia arrived at the new government headquarters early. Seeing the doors weren't open yet, he struck up a conversation with the night shift guard. Do you know the 3 golden rules of a security guard? Chen Xia asked. The young guard furrowed his brows, finding it a very interesting question. After a long moment of thought, he looked directly at Chen Xia. He said seriously and solemnly, helping lost delivery personnel, ensuring homeowners have freedom of speech, and fighting to the death when encountering vicious criminals. Wow, those are all completely wrong. Chen Xia momentarily didn't know whether to praise or criticize. After a stunned pause, he shook his head and replied, You'll never be a qualified security guard. Why? The guard asked in confusion but received no answer.
Because the door had already opened, Chen Xia stepped inside, ready to join the Ye Ying assembly. His clothes were a bit worn, as he hadn't yet received his Ye Ying uniform, making him look out of place among the others. Passers-by around him also shot him strange glances. Chen Xia stood motionless, leaning lazily against the wall. As he'd put it, he was leaning on the wall like a wet noodle, brain on standby.
Chen Xia, right? Go change into this uniform first. A supervisor walked over and handed Chen Xia a set of clothes. Chen Xia acknowledged, took them, and went into the restroom to change. The Yi Ying uniform was a black suit, with a name tag pinned to the left chest to indicate one's identity. Chen Xia tied his tie, his size 42 feet wearing size 43 black leather shoes, and slowly walked out. The supervisor glanced at him, nodded, and said, "Not bad, the clothes fit well, and you look sharp. It's just your demeanor needs a bit more spirit. Don't be so lazy." Right. Chen Xia nodded perfunctorily. He looked at the nearby wall, and without a second thought, leaned against it. This made the supervisor burst out laughing. He helplessly waved his hand and said, All right, go join the assembly. You're probably the only one left. You'll have to do a self-introduction later." Chen Xia followed the indicated path to a thick, heavy door. The door was slightly ajar. Chen Xia slowly stepped inside, and in an instant, he could feel several sharp gazes evaluating him. "Go on, introduce yourself." Suddenly, a teasing voice rang out. Chen Xia then stepped onto the platform, looked at everyone, and calmly said, "My name is Chen Xia, I'm 16 years old, and I live right under the Nantong Road overpass. I'm unmarried, I don't smoke, and my fingers are a bit long. I definitely make it home before 10 p.m. I need to sleep 10 full hours every day. I never stay up late, unless it's an all-nighter. My greatest wish is..." As Chen Xia said this, a smile tugged at the corner of his lips, his lazy voice gaining a hint of seriousness as he continued. "No work, no studying, clothes delivered right to my hands, food brought right to my mouth." Below, murmurs of dissatisfaction arose. What kind of twisted thoughts are those? The Nightingales aren't that kind of organization. Fix your attitude now. Chen Xia's mind trembled. He clearly felt the rejection from the world's will. Those words he just said must not fit his character's setting. So he slumped his face, his whole being as if drained of spirit. He mumbled half-heartedly, "My greatest wish is to become a comrade of justice." He then added, as if half-dead, a final exclamatory phrase. Haha. Does Chen Xia really want to become a comrade of justice? Everyone below the stage could tell. In fact, they didn't even need to look. Just hearing Chen Xia's listless voice was enough to feel his reluctance. Chen Xia didn't want to either, but he was constrained by the world's will. What could he do? He sighed helplessly, walked to the seat with his name written on it, and slumped down listlessly, even his eyes looking a bit gloomy. After all, he had just uttered words that damaged his Dao heart. Of course, this Dao heart was just a metaphor. It wouldn't actually destroy his Dao heart. Besides, Chen Xia didn't even have a Dao heart to begin with. Then, an old man took the stage to speak. He was probably some official leader, reading out the Nightingales' merits over the past month. Red Rabbit, C rank, captured the Black Fox, a C rank ability user, for a grade 3 merit. Green Cat, C rank, eliminated the Masked Berserker, an ability user, for a grade 3 merit. And the last person on this list of merits was Chen Xia, who eliminated the Fire Wielder yesterday. The old man looked up at Chen Xia, who was sitting at the back, almost shrinking under the table. He helplessly shook his head and continued. Chen Xia, level 1, eliminated the Berserker ability user, Fire Wielder, for a grade 3 merit. The moment these words were uttered, the Nightingales below the stage all turned to look at Chen Xia, unconcealed astonishment in their eyes. The Fire Wielder was a target on the Nightingales' most wanted list, a C-rank ability user. For a mere level 1 rookie to kill a C-rank Fire Wielder, they simply couldn't believe it. Chen Xia's figure was nowhere to be seen. He had completely slid under the table. "Dismissed!" The old man's voice boomed. Chen Xia immediately stood up, his spirits refreshed, and quickly headed out the door. "Chen Xia, wait!" a voice called out. Chen Xia wanted to pretend he hadn't heard, but he was afraid the world's will would reject him again. In his helplessness, he reluctantly stopped in his tracks. He hadn't expected a simple descent into the mortal world to cause such great damage to his Daso heart. The supervisor walked towards Chen Xia, holding a sealed envelope-shaped object, and said seriously, "Next, you have to carry out a mission." Chen Xia's face drooped, a forced smile on his lips. His expression held 3 parts helplessness, 4 parts unwillingness, and 93 parts sheepish compliance as he nodded. It was hard to imagine all these expressions appearing on a single face. The supervisor smiled and said, "Don't worry, this mission is very simple. Plus, an old hand will be leading you. Come here." The supervisor waved his hand. Heavy footsteps reverberated from the ground as a figure over 2 meters tall emerged from the room, as sturdy as a house, and stood before Chen Xia. Chen Xia frowned. Standing before him was an ape. "Hello," Jingjing said, taking off his hat. His crude face smiled at Chen Xia. "I am a C-rank night swallow, Captain Jingjing. Damn, I'm practically an old spirit by now." Chen Xia let out a sigh of awe, then quickly regained his composure, politely replying to Captain Jingjing,
Hello, hello. The supervisor, seeing that the two had already introduced themselves, chuckled and said, "Next, you two will be carrying out a mission together." Captain Jing is a seasoned veteran, having completed hundreds of missions. The newcomer can follow along and learn a thing or two. All right. Chen Xia reluctantly nodded. The supervisor gave a few more instructions, then turned and left. Captain Jing put his hat back on and suggested to Chen Xia, "How about we study the mission brief together and make sure we're well prepared?" Chen Xia naturally agreed. The two then opened the envelope and began to study it. The new government's Professor Guangxi will hold an academic seminar next week. Ensure proper security measures during the academic seminar. Captain Jing rubbed his chin, confidently nodding. It's just a simple security mission. I've done it a few times before. No problem, Chen Xia asked. Just the two of us? Captain Jing shook his head. Logically speaking, other night swallows will join the mission. Plus, Professor Guangxi will surely bring his own security personnel. There won't be any issues. Chen Xia glanced at the mission letter again, scrutinizing every single word of security work. Doesn't this mean we'll be working as security guards? Captain Jing nodded. Pretty much. But don't be disheartened. Being a security guard is a pretty good job too. Disheartened? Chen Xia was definitely not disheartened. His #1 dream job was being a security guard. He even knew the 3 golden rules of security guards by heart. At this moment, it was rare to see him this openly thrilled. Seeing him so joyous, Captain Jing also laughed along happily. Luckily, he didn't know the 3 golden rules of security guards Chen Xia held in his heart. The two walked shoulder to shoulder out of headquarters, chatting idly along the way. Captain Jing, hands clasped behind his back, walking with a ramrod straight back like any human, gave Chen Xia a faint smile. You're a fresh recruit. Although your evaluation is only Tier 1, there's no need to be discouraged. The strength of your superpower is actually equivalent to your brainpower. You can gradually train your brainpower to enhance your superpower. Moreover, ability users who level up this way are the least likely to go berserk. Ability users who start with powerful innate talents often have excessive brainpower that they can't control, and under emotional provocation, they go berserk. Chen Xia nodded. He currently had no intention of pursuing the path of superpowers, still planning to continue cultivating immortality. Captain Jing stopped, pulled out a pack of cigarettes from his chest pocket, flicked one out, put it in his mouth, and asked Chen Xia if he wanted one. It's banana-flavored. Chen Xia originally intended to refuse, but upon hearing banana-flavored, he couldn't resist, and asked Captain Jing for a stick. The two stood under the street lamp, chatting like that. Captain Jing exhaled a puff of smoke, smiling as he asked, "Guess what my superpower is?" Chen Xia pinched a banana-flavored cigarette between 2 fingers, flicking the ash as he speculated his special ability was turning into an ape. Captain Ape remained silent, leaning against the lamppost, his face obscured by smoke. After a long while, he slowly shook his head, his voice distant. "If it were that, it'd be great. Too bad it's not." Chen Xia shook his head. "Then I can't guess. There are so many abilities in this world. How am I supposed to figure it out?" Captain Ape said nothing, just took puff after puff from his cigarette. The smoke he exhaled was light, but as it accumulated, it grew thick, obscuring his features and his rugged face. Without seeing his face, he was just a tall, burly, ordinary man. He smoked quickly, only a faint ember remaining, like a fleeting dream. The thick smoke dispersed, revealing Captain Ape's rugged face. Only then did he speak in a low, heavy voice, laden with profound meaning. "My special ability is to turn into a human." Chen Xia frowned, utterly confused. "Isn't that pretty much the same thing?" Captain Ape froze for a moment. Then a delighted smile appeared on his face. He asked, "You really think they're similar?" Chen Xia nodded, casually replying, "No difference." Hee. A joyful smile spread across Captain Ape's face. He tucked the cigarette back into his pocket, and at the same time told Chen Xia, "Don't smoke anymore. Smoking's bad for your health." Chen Xia indeed nodded, extinguished the remaining half, and tossed it into the trash. As the two prepared to part ways, Captain Ape suddenly sighed. "After this mission, I plan to retire, go back home, and get married." Chen Xia was stunned. Don't jinx it. Chapter 45. My wish is to graduate as a virgin. Chen Xia had already started working as a security guard. He was patrolling the outer floors of the building with Captain Ape. This building had a total of 30 floors. The academic conference was held inside, but no one told them which specific floor. They only needed to guard the outer perimeter. Chen Xia bent down to wipe the mud off his leather shoes, then casually flicked the dirt into a nearby trash can. It was nighttime, and the wind was quite strong, making his tie flutter. Captain Ape sat on the railing, smoking, his eyes scanning the surroundings, noting every movement. Nighttime was when vigilance was most crucial. A moment of carelessness could be exploited by villains. Chen Xia stretched, leaning against the railing.
In his spare time, he began to operate the giant turtle breath technique, casually cultivating immortality. You ask why he wasn't paying attention to his surroundings? Because he was a security guard. A security guard couldn't protect anyone, he just needed to protect himself. Among the 3 golden rules of security, Chen Xia could ignore 2, but he would strictly adhere to the last one. Safe retreat when facing villains. This was professional ethics.
Chen Xia sighed, feeling that in the Yuming realm, there truly was a heavenly will at play.
He served as a patroller in a minor grotto heaven martial arts world, and as a guard in a superpower world. Indeed, he was born for this profession. Chen Xia couldn't help but feel pleased with himself, thinking that the Xia Chen myriad worlds was truly excellent. For him, it was high reward, low risk. Even if he were to die, at most he'd only lose 1% of his spiritual sense, which he could recover later. Meanwhile, his main body in the Kangtian Sword Sea could still earn points, and automatically cultivate its realm every year. He was currently undergoing double cultivation.
Captain Xing finished his cigarette, his eyes continuously sizing up Chen Xia. After a long hesitation, he quietly asked, "Do you really think there's no difference between a superpower turning into a human and turning into an ape?"
Chen Xia frowned. I didn't expect Captain Xing to still be hung up on this. He then gave an example. Do you think there's a difference between a human-turned-demon and a demon-turned-human? Captain Xing carefully pondered, musing for a moment, then whispered, It sounds like there's no difference, but fundamentally, there still must be one, right?
For me, there's no difference. Chen Xia responded offhandedly, looking at Captain Xing, and asked doubtfully, Are you lacking confidence?
This remark struck a nerve.
Captain Xing fell silent, his rugged face filled with sorrow. He lowered his head, and after a long while mumbled in reply, Because I'm not human, they always worry I'll go berserk, thinking I'm uncontrollable, extremely dangerous.
Perhaps. Captain Xing's voice grew softer, as if all his strength had been drained, as he uttered the last words. Perhaps I should be locked in a cage.
Chen Xia adjusted his tie, which the wind had slightly dislodged, and chuckled. If it's a big cage with 3 rooms and a hall, I'd actually want to live in it more than you. Captain Xing didn't reply. His sturdy frame sat on the railing, and he pulled another cigarette from the pack, his expression deeply sorrowful, not saying a word. Chen Xia stepped closer, facing the howling night winds, and asked with a smile, Do you really take this matter so seriously?
Captain Xing mumbled a nod. He really did care. After a moment he spoke in a low voice. I'm not human after all. Many people look at me with strange eyes. Who knows what they're thinking? Chen Xia paid no mind, shifting to a smile. Who knows? Maybe in other worlds, there are many people who think you're really cool.
Really?
Captain Xing asked with delight. Who knows? Chen Xia gave a similar answer. The night wind still blew, the building appearing utterly silent, without a single sound. Chen Xia looked at the towering building behind him and the pitch-black night, feeling suspicious. What kind of academic conference needs to be held at night?
Moreover, while he was on guard duty just now, he had seen many beautiful young women go upstairs to attend this academic conference.
Is it legitimate? Chen Xia felt it wasn't quite proper. The night wind blew fiercely and mercilessly swirled around the building. Chen Xia thought to himself, if someone wanted to come and assassinate, they definitely wouldn't come on the first day, nor on the last day, but rather in the dull and uneventful middle period. This was when people were most prone to laziness.
Of course, Chen Xia wasn't among them, because he was always lazy.
And so, the first day passed by peacefully. On the second day, Chen Xia arrived late. The reason was that he needed to get a full 10 hours of sleep. This was something he had once mentioned in his self-introduction. Captain Xing not only didn't scold him but even comforted him, saying, If you feel too exhausted, you can rest a bit more before coming. I can guard alone, it's fine. Good, Chen Xia replied. And sure enough, on the third day, he arrived late again. Captain Xing quietly advised, If it's insomnia, you could try soaking your feet and massaging some acupoints before sleep. His advice was always gentle, afraid of disturbing Chen Xia again. Suddenly, Chen Xia asked curiously, How did you get your powers? It seems ability users who can fly are pretty rare globally. This was something he'd discovered after researching for the past 2 days. A nostalgic look crossed Captain Xing's rugged face as he slowly told Chen Xia, My hometown is in the jungle. My pack is there, with green mountains, clear waters, and blooming flowers everywhere. Of course, none of that has anything to do with me, because I was born in a lab, a test subject for an enhancement drug. I'm the luckiest test subject because I was the only successful one. Ye Ying requested my release, and that's how I became Captain Xing.
Chen Xia nodded, finding it a pretty decent story.
A look of loss appeared on Captain Xing's rugged face. He continued, I said this once before, he repeated. After this mission, I'm heading back home to get married. I think it's better not to just blurt out things like that. Chen Xia mused. The look of loss on Captain Xingxing's face peaked at that moment, a sorrowful expression. He shook his head, like a dull, heavy drumbeat. Pitifully, he said, "That was just a lie. I can't go. I say that every time I'm on a mission. Maybe it's just me hoping I actually can go." "You spoke your wish on the platform, didn't you?" Chen Xia leaned against the railing, his tie fluttering in the wind, and nodded. "Yeah." Captain Xingxing sighed. "I really admire you, being able to voice your wish in front of everyone. Actually, I have a wish too. Want to hear it?" "Go on." Chen Xia leaned against the wall. Captain Xingxing hesitated. "Can you promise not to laugh at me?" "Yeah, I promise." Chen Xia nodded. Captain Xingxing straightened his expression, exhaling repeatedly, as if voicing his wish was incredibly hard for him. After waiting for ages, he finally mustered the courage and loudly declared, "My wish is to graduate from being a virgin, damn it!" Chen Xia gave him a resentful look. "Can I take back my promise from earlier?" he negotiated. Chapter 46. Shi Ting. "Your wish shouldn't be that hard to achieve, right?" Chen Xia asked, bewildered. "It's just graduating from being a virgin. Lots of people at 18, or even before 25, wish to graduate from being a virgin. Of course, after 25, that's a different story. If someone hasn't graduated from being a virgin by 25, Chen Xia suggests they just keep their virgin status because, well, that's actually very... Naturally, he didn't finish that thought." Captain Xingxing nodded, rubbing his chin. "As you said, should I be with a Xingxing or with a human?" This problem was indeed quite tricky, because Captain Xingxing was truly too robust. In every aspect, he was incredibly sturdy, so even Chen Xia found it a bit hard to comment. Captain Xingxing's expression was extremely distressed. He muttered, "If I'm with a Xingxing, my heart won't be able to handle it. If I'm with a human, my body won't be able to handle it." "Yeah, your problem is really a tough one." Chen Xia agreed, and the two immediately began to share their insights on the matter. Chen Xia felt that if Captain Xingxing could get past it mentally, he could consider going into the forest to start a harem. Captain Xingxing nodded. "Sounds not bad. Later, if I gain freedom, I'll go into the forest." Good. Chen Xia nodded. "Actually, dying isn't so bad. I heard you can reincarnate to a different time." Captain Xingxing suddenly spoke. "Where do you want to reincarnate?" Chen Xia asked a question. Captain Xingxing's face showed a look of yearning. "Of course, I want to reincarnate into the second dimension. I heard there are Jingjing waifus there." Chen Xia fell silent, not wanting to continue commenting. "I heard you're an orphan, right?" Still under the overpass, Captain Xingxing suddenly asked with concern. Chen Xia leaned against the railing, turning his head to look down from the building. He smelled an unusual current of air. Captain Xingxing smiled kindly. "After this mission is over, come to my place. I still have 2 empty rooms." Chen Xia didn't reply, because the wind had picked up, and with a boom, a loud noise suddenly erupted from inside the building. Fire spread, and shattered glass fragments scattered. Captain Xingxing immediately moved, rushing towards the inside of the building without hesitation. At the same time, he shouted to Chen Xia, "Wait for me here! If there's danger, run first, don't mind me." He didn't wait for Chen Xia's reply, and rushed into the Dao building. Chen Xia stood up and headed outside. He didn't want to get involved. As for Captain Xingxing, he should be capable of protecting himself. Thinking this, Chen Xia walked to the main entrance of the Dao building, preparing to wait a little longer before escaping. That way, the world's will wouldn't reject him. Through Chen Xia's 2-day trial, he had discovered the world's will's rule of rejection. As long as he didn't perform any eccentric actions, the world's will would have very little influence over him. For example, he, a nightingale who had aspired to be a companion of justice since childhood, certainly couldn't do bad things that didn't fit his character. Of course, directly running away like this wouldn't do either. It was too lacking in a sense of justice. So Chen Xia planned to wait a little longer before escaping. That way, the new government officials wouldn't suspect him. After all, he was only a level 1 nightingale. What else could he do but run? He took out a banana-flavored cigarette from his chest pocket, identical to Captain Xingxing's, planning to smoke 2 before leaving. But just as he lit the first one, someone arrived at the main entrance. They wore a pale mask, had a sturdy build, and carried a human-sized chainsaw. It was as if they had "I want to kill people" written all over their face. Chen Xia's face remained impassive. He only needed to treat this person as an ordinary individual, and that way, he wouldn't trigger the world's will's rejection. So he opened the door and politely said to the chainsaw wielder, "Welcome." The burly chainsaw wielder from behind his pale mask let out a sneering chuckle. "Little bug, I want to dismember you and hang your pieces on the main entrance." Chen Xia lowered his head, pretending not to hear, and continued, "Academic conference. Please proceed to the 13th floor." He randomly made up a floor. "I'm going to kill you, ha!" The sound of the chainsaw, like a death knell, rapidly approached Chen Xia. Your mother, Chen Xia, was a bit pissed. He lifted his head and kicked through the iron fence nearby, then grabbed an iron rod. He tossed the cigarette from his mouth, stomping it out with his foot. If they really wanted to piss him off, the next time he came to this world, it wouldn't just be a wisp of his divine sense. He'd just flip the table. Everyone might as well stop playing. The sound of the chainsaw was very close now, its whirring pouring into his ears. Chen Xia lifted his head, wielding the rod with both hands, swinging it in overlapping, deadly blows. It tore through the air with whistling sounds, even drowning out the chainsaw's roar. The sound of bones shattering echoed continuously. After a single strike, he directly beat the chainsaw guy in white, until he was prostrate on the ground, half of his shoulder completely ripped apart.
Chen Xia tossed aside the bent iron rod, lit a cigarette, and asked, "Are you always this brave?"
There was no reply, because the chainsaw guy was already half dead, only emitting inarticulate whimpers.
He probably never expected that a casual killing intent from himself would provoke a terrifying existence from outside this realm, like Chen Xia. It was like gleefully going to your own fish pond to fish, only for the line to tug, and when you reeled it in, you'd discover, holy shit, it was a megalodon. Damn you! The chainsaw guy probably breathed his last with such thoughts. Chen Xia exhaled a puff of smoke, curled a finger, placed it before the chainsaw guy, then suddenly flicked it, completely ending his half-dead life. He turned his head to look back at Dao Chapter, then considered whether he should help Captain Jing for a bit. Probably not necessary, right?
He frowned, reconsidering, and thought, reincarnating into a 2D world is indeed one of Jing's dreams. I still shouldn't interfere. He thought so, but often things don't turn out as perfectly as planned. The building began to explode floor by floor, glass shattered, and flames filled the sky.
Chen Xia raised a hand in front of him, blocking the flying glass shards. His pupils constricted slightly. He saw a figure rapidly descending, the wind growing louder, a deafening roar, flames dancing. The figure, wreathed in burning flames, fell, landing on the ground with a boom! Chen Xia tilted his head and looked over. It was Captain Jing. His face was filled with terror. He opened his mouth and cried out to Chen Xia, "Run!" Chen Xia didn't need to calmly reply. He casually flicked his hand, grabbing the bent iron rod from the ground. He patted the dust off the shoulder of his vest. In front of him, a black shadow had already appeared. It stood just like that in front of the main entrance, its eyes extremely cold, as if a bitter winter was staring fixedly at Chen Xia. "If possible, please retract your disrespectful gaze. It will make your eventual death a little more comfortable," Chen Xia warned him. The black shadow said nothing, moving lightly. A slender arm reached out from within its robes. With a cold, emotionless voice and a declarative tone, it said, "Our work here cannot leave behind any loose ends. This is our rule. I always abide by the rules." The black shadow's words were unhurried. 2 hands slowly extended from within its wide sleeves. Around them, glass shards fell, flames danced, and a pale aura began to spread. With a whoosh, all these things froze. Chen Xia, still holding the bent iron rod, flashed before the black shadow. Its pupils flashed with a transparent hue. With a loud crack, the iron rod snapped. The flames resumed their dance, and the black shadow slammed into the door, shattering the wall. Chen Xia plucked a cigarette from the pack, used a small flickering flame to light it, and took a drag. "No need to strive? Your head start already flaunted everything. What's left for me to show off?" Your author here updated 4 small chapters today. Thanks for your support, brothers. Super grateful. Any brothers want to transmigrate to the 2D world? Chapter 47. Time in the entire world froze. The fire wielder fell to the ground, looking thoroughly dead. To avoid being discovered and causing unnecessary trouble, Chen Xia quickly withdrew from the scene. This small world could be considered a place for secluded cultivation, and he certainly didn't want to stir up more trouble. Even if this small world's strength was very weak, it was still best not to cause more complications. He wandered around the small world. There was nothing special about this place. It was just an ordinary small world with a bit of supernatural power, and he couldn't sense the existence of any particularly formidable strength. The world will's repulsion towards Chen Xia wasn't significant, which meant he could slowly linger in this small world, cultivate peacefully, and gain insights. The dark shadow was embedded deep within the cracked wall, fragments of cement plaster clattering down. He stared in disbelief at the young man in the baggy black suit leisurely smoking before him. His unique power was manipulating shadows and static space, an S-tier ability that could instantly assassinate any nightingale. But just a moment ago, he hadn't even seen how this young man made his move. No fluctuations of unique power, no elemental changes, just a pure swing of an iron rod carrying a physical force that devoured everything. Chen Xia held the banana-flavored cigarette between 2 fingers, exhaling a thin wisp of smoke that drifted in the air, his clear, calm gaze fixed on the dark shadow. He stepped forward, tapping the broken wall fragment with his thick, size 43 shoe sole. "I already told you, I'm a very law-abiding security guard. You came to sabotage an academic conference? That's smashing my rice bowl." A security guard who loses his rice bowl faces very serious consequences. The dark shadow gritted his teeth, letting out a strange growl from his throat. His body suddenly shattered into countless dark bats, carrying dark flames,
intending to flee into the night.
Facing this eerie power, Chen Xia simply extended his hand.
Time stop. The two words softly echoed, yet carried the supreme laws of the great Dabo.
The countless dark bats froze in mid-air, maintaining their twisted wing-flapping postures.
Chen Xia stepped forward, raised the bent iron rod, and powerfully smashed down on each bat one by one.
Thwack! Thwack! Thwack!
Explosive sounds continuously echoed.
Each bat was smashed into bone and gore.
In just 3 breaths, time, the darkness dissipated, and the dark shadow was forced back into his true form, collapsing onto the ground, his entire body's bones shattered, gasping for breath.
Captain Jing then stumbled out from the rubble, his glossy black fur scorched in many places. A large shard of broken glass was still embedded in his shoulder, and fresh blood flowed profusely, staining his entire suit red.
He looked at the dark shadow lying on the ground, then at Chen Xia, who was tapping off his cigarette ash, his rough face showing dumbfounded shock.
Why you?
Just what tier of unique power are you?
Chen Xia tossed the cigarette to the ground, stomped it out with his thick heel, and waved his hand in response.
I don't have any unique powers. I'm just naturally born with divine strength, plus a little luck, that's all. With that, he walked over to Captain Jing, extended a finger, and lightly touched his wound. A wisp of spiritual energy from the small grotto heaven, guided by Chen Xia, flowed directly into the giant ape's body.
The shattered glass shards were expelled, and its flesh rapidly closed up at a speed visible to the naked eye.
Captain Ape gaped in astonishment, his mouth so wide it could fit a watermelon. Is this also innate divine strength?
Chen Xia nodded seriously and said,
Indeed, my divine power has a healing effect, specializing in treating external injuries. He didn't say anything more, turning his head to look up at the pitch-black night sky.
Through 1% of his divine sense, Chen Xia sensed an aura not belonging to this world rapidly approaching,
an aura of decay, greed, and destructive malice.
He suddenly understood the origin of the meteorite carrying special abilities that fell decades ago.
That wasn't a natural disaster, but a seed sown by a wandering cosmic harvester. That being released meteorites carrying what was called special abilities onto small worlds, forcing the living beings there to evolve and absorb the destiny and shi-lux of the world. Once the ability users developed to a certain level and the world entered a state of extreme chaos, the harvesters would personally descend to devour this entire ripe fruit.
The coffin organization was likely the pawns cultivated by the harvesters in this world to accelerate the process of chaos. Sure enough, the very next moment, the night sky above the city suddenly tore open, revealing a gigantic rift. The sky was no longer black, but turned a blood red.
A terrifying pressure descended from the sky, crushing and causing all the glass of the city's high-rise buildings to shatter simultaneously.
Ear-splitting sirens blared everywhere. Streetlights flickered continuously, then died out completely. The crowds began screaming and fleeing.
Vehicles crashed into each other, creating chain explosions. Nightfall enforcers from all over the headquarters furiously deployed.
Countless light, fire, and ice abilities roared and shot into the sky, but before they could even reach the blood-red rift, all were crushed into fine powder by an invisible pressure. From within the rift, a figure slowly stepped out.
That being wore ancient robes, his entire body enveloped by strange streams of light, and countless small orbs of light floated behind him.
Each orb seemed to be the remnant of a world he had once devoured.
He looked down at the city, engulfed in flames and panic, the corner of his mouth curling into a contemptuous smile. You foolish ants! It is time to offer your souls and shi-lux to this venerable one. The harvester's voice echoed through every corner of the world, carrying immense spiritual power that caused countless mortals to directly faint. Even S-rank ability users had to prostrate themselves on the ground, blood flowing from their 7 orifices.
Captain Ape braced his hands on the ground, his gigantic body trembling violently. He struggled to lift his head to look at the sky, his eyes filled with despair.
Chen Xia! Run! That thing isn't an ability user. That's a divine being. Chen Xia didn't run. He pulled out a banana-flavored cigarette pack from his pocket, only to find it empty. He clicked his tongue, tossed the empty pack, and looked up at the show-off in the sky. A god? Chen Xia chuckled. He'd once chopped off the hand of a self-proclaimed god in his previous world. Who knew he'd encounter another piece of cosmic trash cosplaying as a god in this one? This guy's realm was leagues below that. Great hand. At best, he was a soul transformation stage cultivator, aimlessly drifting through the myriad worlds, specializing in bullying small, defenseless worlds.
Chen Xia rolled up his vest sleeves and picked up the crooked iron rod from the ground.
He opened his system panel in his mind, glancing at his destiny points. 141. Today, he decided to go all in. His entire 1% of divine sense erupted with a seemingly delicate yet utterly pure surge of power, the pinnacle of the grand Dako of time itself. In that instant, this small world seemed to hit the pause button. The explosions of cars halted, Shattered glass shards hung suspended in midair, and flames froze into bizarre, twisted shapes. A tear on a child's cheek froze mid-fall, and the entire world plunged into absolute stillness. Only the harvester in the sky could still move, but his expression shifted wildly. He sensed the law of time, a supreme principle rarely grasped, even by mighty experts in the great myriad heavens. Yet here it was, manifesting in this trashy little world. Who dares to play such tricks? The harvester roared, his long robes fluttering as countless defensive Dharma treasures materialized around him, forming hundreds of layers of dazzling light barriers. Just the security guard of this building. And you're gonna pay me for overtime. A lazy voice sounded right behind him. The harvester spun around in alarm. He saw a 16-year-old youth in an ill-fitting suit, holding an utterly mundane iron rod, standing in midair, gazing at him. No wings, no special aerial powers. The youth simply stepped on air, as if all laws bowed before his size 43 shoes. The harvester didn't hesitate, unleashing a planet-destroying palm strike directly at Chen Xia. But before the palm wind could even reach him, it automatically dissipated. The 141 destiny points began to show their power. The moment the harvester circulated his energy, his meridians instantly became chaotic. Spiritual energy surged wildly, and a bizarre wind blew from the void, disrupting all his defensive formations. Chen Xia remained expressionless. He swung the iron rod. The seemingly small, 3.9 power of his 1% divine sense, when empowered by the grand Dao of time and supreme destiny, became an unavoidable, unstoppable strike. Thwack! The iron rod slammed straight into the harvester's skull. Hundreds of layers of defense shattered like soap bubbles. The harvester let out a tragic shriek, all his teeth flying out. His body, like a fiery meteor, plummeted headfirst to the ground, slamming into a 100-meter deep crater right in the center of the main plaza. The time stop ended, and the world's clamor returned. Everyone, including Ye Ying and Captain Gorilla, stared blankly at the colossal, suddenly appearing crater, and the black-suited youth slowly descended to the edge of the crater. At the bottom of the crater, the harvester lay dying, his body's Dao laws shattered, his Dao foundation utterly destroyed. He stared at Chen Xia, his eyes brimming with absolute terror. You're absolutely not a creature of this world. Who are you? Chen Xia casually tossed the iron rod into the crater, dusted his hands, and lazily replied, I already told you, I'm an associate of justice, moonlighting as a security guard. With that, he turned and walked towards Captain Gorilla, who was still petrified on the spot. In the blink of an eye, Chen Xia was standing right before the giant gorilla. The security mission is complete. Chen Xia patted Captain Xing Xing's hairy arm. It's time for me to go now too. My 1% divine sense has absorbed enough of this world's laws. There's no point in staying longer. Captain Xing Xing swallowed hard, his deep voice trembling. Where are you going? Chen Xia looked up at the sky, which was gradually returning to its clear blue. Back to where I belong. Before I go, I have a parting gift for you. He smiled, his clear eyes flashing with a teal light. With the power of karma luck 141 and the law of time, Chen Xia reached out and drew a line in the void. The space in front of Captain Xing Xing was torn open, revealing a vortex filled with dazzling, colorful light. From within the vortex came melodious music and fantastical images of a two-dimensional animated world. Haven't you always wanted to graduate from being a virgin? The two-dimensional world is calling you. There are lots of cute Xingxing girls there. No one will see you as a monster anymore. Chen Xia winked. Captain Xingxing stared at the spatial vortex, his coarse eyes suddenly welling up, and pea-sized tears rolled down his cheeks. He didn't know how to express his gratitude, so he could only kneel on one knee and solemnly bow. Chen Xia, thank you, bro. Go on. Chen Xia waved his hand. Captain Xingxing stood up, took a deep breath, and resolutely stepped into the vortex. The space closed, leaving Chen Xia standing alone amidst the ruins. He closed his eyes, feeling this small world frantically offer its purest karma luck to him as a form of repayment for saving the world. His divine sense began to dissipate, transforming into specks of light that flew into the sky, passing through the myriad heavens and returning to his true body. Kangtian Sword Sea, a calm, shallow sea. Chen Xia suddenly opened his eyes wide. He was still sitting cross-legged on a submerged rock at the bottom of the sea, surrounded by schools of small swordfish. Memories from the minor world of abilities flooded back like a long dream. He rubbed the tip of his nose, and a familiar smile curled at the corner of his mouth. This journey truly yielded immense gains. The 1% divine sense brought back wasn't just immense karma luck, but also the perfect fusion of various world laws, causing the profound soul chi in his body to instantly skyrocket. A splash rang out. The old fisherman appeared on the surface of the sea, standing atop a giant swordfish, still holding a bronze fishing rod. He looked at Chen Xia in surprise, his caterpillar eyebrows furrowing tightly. Brat, you just immersed your divine consciousness for the duration of an incense stick. Why are you awake already? Did you get beaten to death by the natives so quickly? Chen Xia stood up and stretched lazily, feeling refreshed. The water bubbles around him automatically parting. 1 incense stick's worth of time in the great myriad heavens was a lifetime in the minor world.
He smiled at the old fisherman. I wasn't beaten to death. I just casually saved a world, helped a chimpanzee lose his V-card, and then returned after a nap. The old fisherman was about to scold him for spouting nonsense. But immediately, he noticed the earth-shattering changes on Chen Xia's body.
His peak nascent soul cultivation, which had been suppressed, now erupted like a volcano.
Spiritual energy within 100,000 lives of the Kangtian Sword Sea frantically converged towards Chen Xia, forming a massive vortex at the bottom of the sea.
His 7-colored golden core in his dantian completely shattered. A miniature nascent soul, resembling Chen Xia, holding an iron staff in its hand, appeared, sitting cross-legged with its eyes tightly shut.
The aura of the great Tao of time, ultimate power and supreme destiny intertwined, transforming that nascent soul into an existence beyond the comprehension of ordinary cultivators.
Soul transformation stage. Grand completion, soul transformation stage.
The old fisherman gasped. His hand holding the fishing rod trembled.
You actually directly bypass several cultivation barriers, and your Tao foundation is frighteningly stable. Don't even mention the grand entrance selection. Even if it's competing for the position of the sect master's true disciple, you'd be more than capable. Chen Xia reined in his aura, and the surrounding seawater returned to stillness.
He stepped onto the water surface, standing shoulder to shoulder with the old fisherman.
I told you, as long as I live long enough, I'll naturally be invincible. Now, I feel I'm invincible enough to take a stroll. No need to wait another 500 years. I want to enter the deep sea region.
The old fisherman fell silent for a long moment, his complex gaze fixed on the lazy youth before him.
Below the saint realm, all are ants. But this brat clearly hasn't reached the saint realm, yet he gives me the feeling that even a saint can't stop his steps.
He let out a sigh, retracting his fishing rod.
All right, the deep sea region is fraught with dangers, but with your current strength, you're qualified to enter. Follow me.
Chen Xia followed the old fisherman, stepping past the boundary of millions of li of the shallow sea region.
The seawater suddenly turned pitch black. Terrifying pressure surged from all directions, and substantial sword intent tore through space. At the bottom of the deep sea, massive, dark figures lurked.
Those were bizarre creatures, suppressed by the Kangtian Sword Sea for millions of years.
Sensing the aura of a stranger, they immediately lunged forward madly.
Countless pitch-black tentacles, carrying corrosive great Tao venom, coiled around Chen Xia.
Chen Xia didn't retreat, nor did he bother to draw his weapon. He simply stepped forward. With each step he took, the great Tao of time created a ripple of stillness.
The moment the bizarre tentacles touched these ripples,
they were sealed within the river of time, decaying and turning into dust.
These bizarre creatures,
which had once caused countless powerhouses to perish, were now as frail as paper before Chen Xia.
The old fisherman, walking ahead, occasionally turned back to look, his mouth twitching uncontrollably.
This brat is truly a monster.
The two continued deeper into the heart of the Kangtian Sword Sea. There, a colossal sword pierced straight from the seabed all the way to the 9 heavens, radiating 10,000 zhang of swordlight.
At the base of the colossal sword, 2 blurry figures sat opposite each other, drinking. These were the 2 great emperors guarding the Kangtian Sword Sea. They simultaneously paused their wine cups, their gazes piercing through time and space, looking towards Chen Xia. A wave of majestic pressure, imbued with the power of destruction and creation, surged down, intending to test the Tao heart of the newcomer.
Facing the great emperor's might, the old fisherman immediately bowed respectfully, but Chen Xia remained indifferent.
He lazily yawned, then stretched out a hand and pushed the oppressive might away from his body, as if swatting an annoying cobweb. He looked at the 2 great emperors, smiled, and said, "Sirs, I'm not here to acknowledge a master, nor to contend for supremacy. I merely wish to pass through."
One of the great emperors spoke, his voice rumbling like thunder.
"Pass through? To where?" Chen Xia looked up at the boundless void above the colossal sword. "To find those I'm meant to meet.
I've promised to reunite, so even if myriad realms separate us, blocked by life and death, I must still go.
Huang Qingyu is waiting for me on 9th Mountain. Xiao Shu'er is at the Yanyu Immortal sect. I'm now strong enough to protect my lazy life. No one can bother me anymore."
With that said, Chen Xia didn't wait for the 2 great emperors' reply.
He mobilized all 500 points of his strength, 141 points of destiny, and his great Tao of time, which had already reached grand completion. He threw a punch, and the sky of the Kangtian Sword Sea was torn open into a colossal rift, revealing a path leading straight to the heart of the immortal realm.
Chen Xia waved goodbye to the old fisherman, then leisurely stepped into the rift.
The 2 great emperors watched his retreating figure, remaining silent for a long time before raising their cups together. One who neither strives nor contends, yet uses the laziest attitude to achieve true invincibility.
His donghua we simply cannot comprehend. Many years later, in a peaceful corner of an entirely new minor world, where lush green mountains stretched and water gurgled, a small wooden house nestled by a lake. In front of the house, a peach blossom tree was blooming brilliantly. Huang Qingyue and Xiao Shui'er were sitting under the peach tree, combing each other's hair. Their cheerful chatter and giggles echoed. In the distance, a casually dressed man in simple green robes was sprawled on a bamboo swing chair, a blade of foxtail grass in his mouth, his eyes half closed as he basked in the warm afternoon sun. No more slaughter, no more contention for the great Dabio, no more conspiracies of the myriad heavens and worlds. Chen Xia gently swayed the chair. He was truly invincible. Because true invincibility wasn't about how many people he defeated, but having the right to choose to live an ordinary, peaceful life beside those he loved until the end of time. A gentle breeze blew past, and peach blossom petals fluttered down, landing on his robes. Chen Xia smiled, slowly drifting into the deepest and most peaceful sleep he had known in tens of thousands of years.